place. After that, survivors began gathering around her, and she became their leader. As for being called boss, that was just her personal preference. Seeing this typical cute, mo girl liking things like fighting and commanding people left Jiang Lushi speechless. Anyone who didn't know her would definitely be misled by her baby-faced cuteness. What do you mean you had to leave? Why? Jiang Lushi asked. Jiang Zhuing pouted and thought for a moment, then said, it's hard to explain. You'll understand later, big brother. Jiang Lushi still found it hard to believe. During the time he was heading to Jinling City, his younger sister Jiang Zhuing not only became an ability user, but also became the leader of a survivor team. And this wasn't just an ordinary survivor team. According to Jiang Zhuing's description, Jiang Lushi learned the general situation of the survivor team she led. This team now had more than 20 members. The number didn't seem large, but when Jiang Lushi learned that it included 4 ability users, he was shocked. In that small town before, Brother Yu alone could dominate and throw his weight around. For ability users, what did that mean? And among these 4 ability users, Jiang Zhuing was the strongest. According to Jiang Zhuing herself, she was the undisputed boss. As a child, Jiang Zhuing had been the leader among dozens of neighborhood kids, while Jiang Lushi was much more low-key in comparison. Usually, it was little girls who got bullied by other kids, and then their parents would come seeking justice. But when it came to Jiang Zhuing, it was just the opposite. Back then, it was all just child's play. But now, she was a real leader. Leading a group of survivors and being a childhood gang leader were 2 completely different things. In the apocalypse, every decision a leader made concerned the life or death of the survivor team. Xiaoying, what's your ability? Jiang Lushi asked. That brother Yu had very well-developed leg muscles and was fast, that was the result of his mutation. But when Jiang Lushi looked Jiang Zhuing up and down, he didn't see any changes in her appearance. She still looked as slender as before, but because of fitness, she gave off a vibrant feeling. But she definitely didn't look like someone with overwhelming combat power. Those zombies outside the car earlier, did you kill them? Jiang Lushi had a rough idea of Jiang Zhuing's strength. To kill those zombies almost simultaneously in such a short time, he wondered what her ability really was. In front of Jiang Lushi, Jiang Zhuing always acted like a little girl. When she heard his question, she immediately revealed an expression that she would never show in front of the other survivors. She smiled proudly, then lightly waved the iron rod in her hand. A few strands of blue electricity suddenly danced across the iron rod. Jiang Lushi was startled, those currents even seemed to reflect in his pupils. Jiang Lushi was truly shocked. Although Brother Yu had mutated, he was basically just stronger than normal people. His speed was much greater than that of world-class sprinters, but it still hadn't reached a point that seemed completely implausible. With the apocalypse's arrival, zombies and mutant beasts had appeared. Ability users like Brother Yu were strong, but still within human comprehension. But someone like Jiang Zhuing, whose body could generate electricity, that was just too unbelievable. Although Jiang Lushi knew that human activity could produce static electricity, the kind of energy that just gives a little shock to the finger at most, the electric current Jiang Zhuing just released felt terrifying. How about that, big brother? Your little sister is awesome, right? I've already measured my attack voltage, Jiang Zhuing said. She wouldn't boast in front of others, but in front of Jiang Lushi, it was like a kid proudly showing off a perfect test score. How much? Jiang Lushi asked urgently, not even in the mood to mock her smug attitude. Heh. Jiang Zhuing cleared her throat and said, it's 1000 volts now. 1000 volts. Jiang Lushi took a deep breath. The human body's resistance constantly changes. At low voltages, dry skin can have a resistance of up to 100,000 ohms or more. But when the voltage rises to 1000 volts, the resistance can drop sharply to only 1000 ohms. With Jiang Zhuing's attack voltage of 1000 volts, the current flowing through a human body would be 1 ampere, that's an extremely high number. Her attack power would also reach 1000 watts. What does 1000 watts mean? If Jiang Zhuing maintained that power output for 10 minutes, it would be equal to the energy needed to lift 1060 kilograms people to the top of a 100-meter building. However, Jiang Lushi also knew that his shock came from preconceived notions of ordinary human capabilities. In reality, after virus-induced mutations, ability users becoming like electric eels capable of releasing electricity wasn't hard to understand. An adult electric eel can produce up to 800 volts, easily enough to kill a person. Due to the virus, Jiang Zhuing's cells mutated into discharge cells. Connected together, they formed very high voltages. And Jiang Zhuing's power level was on a completely different level from Brother Yu's. According to Starseed's evaluation, Brother Yu's ability didn't even reach level 1, while Jiang Zhuiying. Release electricity again, Jiang Lushur said. Jiang Zhuiying grumbled, why, big brother? Do you think I'm Pikachu, but still obediently released electricity again? You liked Pikachu the most when you were little. No wonder you mutated like this, Jiang Lushur said. Jiang Zhuiying pouted. This time, she wasn't afraid of startling Jiang Lushur. The blue and white electricity continued to flash on the iron rod like it was wrapped in an electric net. Her clear eyes reflected the sparks, and she suddenly seemed to emit a completely different aura. Jiang Lushur stood in front of Jiang Zhuiying and felt that this should be enough energy release. Sure enough, just 2 seconds later, Starseed's voice rang out, level 1 mutation energy detected. Jiang Zhuiying was level 1. Jiang Lushur understood now. The mutant boar was also level 1. But Jiang Lushur noticed that after Jiang Zhuiying's energy level, there was a small plus sign. When he asked Starseed in his mind, he found that this plus meant stronger energy. In other words, Jiang Zhuiying's mutation energy was even stronger than that of the mutant boar. And Brother Yu was below level 1, probably a level 1 minus. What was your starting voltage? Jiang Lushur asked again. How would I know? At first, I could just make a 10 centimeter spark between my fingers, Jiang Zhuiying said. That meant she had evolved. Oh right, big brother, where did you get this RV? It's amazing. And, you knew about the apocalypse in advance? What's going on? Jiang Zhuiying asked. She even leaned closer to Jiang Lushur's ear and whispered the question. Well, Jiang Lushur felt that explaining all of this would be very troublesome. At that moment, there were 2 knocks on the car window, and the young man's voice came through, Boss, we gotta go. It's getting dark. Jiang Lushur turned to look. Sure enough, it was already getting dark outside. Big brother, we'll talk later, we have to go, Jiang Zhuiying said after glancing out the window. As soon as the sky began to darken, these people immediately got ready to leave. Jiang Lushur saw them quickly pick up the backpacks they had left on the ground earlier. They each carried their weapons, and their mental state was completely different from when they had been resting. Jiang Zhuiying was just about to get off the base vehicle when she suddenly paused, turned her head, and said in surprise, Brother, let's go. They were about to leave, but Jiang Lushur neither followed her out of the vehicle nor went to pack anything to bring along. Instead, he walked over and sat in the driver's seat. You come sit here. Jiang Lushur gestured with his eyes toward the front passenger seat, then opened the driver's side window and said to the people outside, you all get in too. We'll drive. These people had seen Jiang Lushur sit in the driver's seat just moments ago. At first, they didn't react, or rather, they thought their assumption was too far-fetched. But when they heard Jiang Lushur say this, they looked at each other in disbelief, completely stunned. Drive away? If it were a small car, maybe that would be fine. But damn it, this was a minibus. Driving something like this out, was he trying to make them even more obvious among the zombies? Of course, that wasn't the main issue. They were all pretty strong, and Jiang Zhuiying was even stronger. Even if they were more visible, it would just mean more fighting. So if this minibus were still in decent condition, they wouldn't have reacted so strongly. But this minibus was not only old and worn out, it even had a cargo trailer hitched to the back. And from the looks of Jiang Lushur, he clearly didn't plan on detaching the trailer. Plus, Jiang Lushur's tone just now was totally casual, as if he didn't think there was anything strange about driving this minibus. In fact, not only did Jiang Lushur think there was no problem, he valued the base vehicle very highly. He usually wouldn't let so many people on board. It was only because these people were Jiang Zhuiying's subordinates that he took the initiative to invite them. Jiang Zhuiying glanced outside the car door, then looked at Jiang Lushur. She didn't seem to care and just sat down in the front passenger seat. Seeing that the group was still standing outside in a daze, Jiang Zhuiying leaned toward the windshield and shouted, "Why are you just standing there? Get in." They had been thinking that maybe they couldn't refuse Jiang Zhuiying's brother's offer, but Jiang Zhuiying could. They didn't expect that the usually calm and rational Jiang Zhuiying would agree without even hesitating. But seeing that Jiang Zhuiying was already sitting there steadily, the young man, the curly-haired girl, and the other 3 exchanged glances and obediently got on the vehicle. As soon as they got inside, they were shocked. The outside of the vehicle looked so run down, but the inside was a luxurious RV. The curly-haired girl looked around curiously and saw that the interior really had everything. "This vehicle is such a luxury," the young man exclaimed. The curly-haired girl gave him a speechless glance but said nothing. However, what she was thinking was, luxurious, sure, but in the apocalypse, what's the point? It's completely impractical. "Hello, Zhuiying's brother. I'm Yang Qingqing, nice to meet you. You came all the way from Jiangbei, that's amazing, it must have been tough." The curly-haired girl walked to the driver's area, smiled sweetly, and spoke in a very concerned tone. Her words were well-crafted, flawless. From her perspective, coming from Jiangbei to Jinling wasn't just tough, it was a near-death journey. Saying this expressed concern while remaining tactful. She had already thought of how to approach Jiang Lushur before getting in the car. While speaking, she extended a soft, fair hand. "Nice to meet you. Just call me Jiang Lushur," he said, politely shaking her hand. Just as their hands were about to touch, the curly-haired girl's smile stiffened for a moment, but she quickly covered it up and shook his hand. "You're Zhuying's brother, so that makes you close to us. We're all good friends with Zhuying, and I'm even her classmate. I'll call you Brother Jiang from now on, okay?" Of course, Jiang Lushur nodded. This was the university Jiang Zhuying had attended, so the curly-haired girl being her classmate wasn't too surprising. The young man quickly came over to shake hands as well. "Hello, big brother. I'm Zhang Hai. Just call me Haizi. I really admire our boss." The others also came to greet Jiang Lushur one after another. From this, Jiang Lushur learned that Yang Qingqing and Zhang Hai were both ability users. There was also a short man who was an ability user, while the muscular man was not. He was originally a security guard, a retired soldier, and in this survivor team, his combat ability ranked just below the ability users. There was another woman who was also an ordinary person, but she had good athletic ability and seemed like someone who didn't talk much. After greeting, Zhang Hai went to the back and sat next to Yang Qingqing, who then said in a low voice with a strange expression, "This brother Jiang is an ordinary person, there's no energy fluctuation from him." Ability users could sense the mutation energy leaking from other ability users, similar to the function of the starseed, and could even judge the strength of that energy. But from Jiang Lushur, Yang Qingqing didn't sense anything at all. Zhang Hai noticed it too, but didn't mind. Isn't that even more impressive? A regular person made it all the way to Jinling. "Keep your voice down." Yang Qingqing scolded sharply. What if Jiang Lushur or Jiang Zhuing heard? She didn't bother talking to Zhang Hai anymore and turned to look at Jiang Lushur. Not an ability user. These siblings, one was a genius among ability users, and the other had no powers at all. It was quite interesting. Yang Qingqing thought to herself. The sofa beneath her was quite comfortable. She pressed it twice with her hand. But after realizing that Jiang Lushur wasn't an ability user, and seeing the vehicle's shabby exterior, she had no hopes for how far it could go. At that moment, Jiang Lushur had already started the base vehicle. He turned and asked, "Xiaoying, where are you guys staying? I'll check the map to see if there's a better route. Zombies are kind of annoying." For ordinary people, annoying was an understatement. Even for them, moving through zombies was extremely dangerous. However, Jiang Zhuing was very cooperative. "There's even a map." "Haha, let me see. Actually, zombies aren't a big deal. You can open the window, I'll just electrocute them, like a mounted machine gun." Seeing this side of Jiang Zhuing made everyone feel like rubbing their eyes to check if they were hallucinating. Normally, if anyone had said something so unrealistic, Jiang Zhuing would have given them a cold laugh that sent chills down their spine. But when Jiang Lushur said it, Jiang Zhuing gave her unconditional support. But thinking about how the siblings had just reunited, it kind of made sense that Jiang Zhuing was acting a bit out of character, right? Jiang Lushur started up the minibus. At that moment, Zhang Hai asked, "By the way, big bro, with such a big space inside your vehicle, why are you still dragging a little cargo trailer? What's in it?" Jiang Lushur glanced at them through the rearview mirror and casually said, "Just some luggage. I can't go back to my old home, but there are some things I can't let go of." Upon hearing this answer, Yang Qingqing and the others were slightly stunned. Who flees for their life and brings a whole trailer of luggage? Jiang Zhuing's brother really had quite a strange way of thinking. A trace of undisguised contempt flashed through their eyes. They figured this vehicle was probably something Jiang Lushur had picked up after the apocalypse. If you're going to pick a car, at least pick a sturdy one. But he picked a fancy RV, clearly the kind some rich guy had recklessly modified. Yang Qingqing, being Jiang Zhuing's classmate, had some understanding of her family background. To put it nicely, it was below average. To put it harshly, they were practically a poverty-stricken household awaiting aid. So with this in mind, she looked down on Jiang Lushur even more. The apocalypse hit, and the first thing he thought of was getting an RV, just to satisfy the vanity of owning something he couldn't afford before? Typical poor man mentality. Not only that, he dragged around a whole trailer full of useless stuff. This was like a flood coming and someone insisting on going back to rescue their wallet. If he weren't Jiang Zhuing's brother, they would have already started mocking him. Seeing these people looking awkward and not knowing what to say, Jiang Lushur knew they were at a loss for words. As for these people, Jiang Lushur never really trusted them in the first place. In the apocalypse, who knew what people might do? It was only because Jiang Zhuing was here that he was sure they wouldn't cause trouble. But mutant beast meat was still a huge temptation. Of course Jiang Lusher wouldn't tell them that the so-called junk trailer they despised was actually full of mutant beast meat. Seeing them instantly lose interest in the trailer made Jiang Lusher feel rather satisfied. The minibus drove toward the community gate. The group glanced back and felt a sense of relief. They finally didn't have to come back to this place anymore. Because of Jiang Lusher, they had been coming here every day after finishing their tasks. If Jiang Lusher hadn't shown up today, they would have had to drag the zombie corpses away from the gate like always. According to Jiang Zhuing, they had to do that to make sure the place wouldn't be swarming with zombies when Jiang Lusher arrived. If the residential complex weren't so unsuitable for survivors, Jiang Zhuing had even considered just living there. Watching Jiang Zhuing happily chatting with Jiang Lusher, Yang Qingqing showed a helpless expression in her eyes. But unlike what Yang Qingqing and the others expected, Jiang Lusher chose only narrow streets and alleys while driving, and even when they encountered zombies, Jiang Zhuing would lean out the window and handle them immediately. So, this bizarre minibus actually reached their place without a hitch. Of course, it helped that the distance between their place and the residential area wasn't very far. Even though the residential area wasn't suitable for survivors, Jiang Zhuing had still tried to pick the closest possible location for Jiang Lusher. Jiang Zhuing's survivor team's base was in a luxurious villa neighborhood. In front was an artificial lake, cutting them off from the zombies on the main street. The area hadn't had many residents to begin with, and after the apocalypse, the number of zombies was even lower, now completely cleared out. "We live in that house," Jiang Zhuing said while pointing out the way to Jiang Lusher. The minibus slowly came to a stop in front of a standalone villa. In a place like Jinling, even just the large lawn around the villa seemed absurdly luxurious, not to mention the massive 4-story villa sitting in the middle of it. There was no one in this villa when we arrived. It was all tidy and clean, nothing was messed up, and everything we needed was there. Plus, there are plenty of rooms, so we stayed," Jiang Zhuing said. Jiang Lusher guessed that the original owner of this villa probably evacuated early, just like Li Yusin's family. Naturally, there were no bloodstains or signs of violence. In contrast, ordinary survivors had truly woken up in hell the moment they fainted. "Brother Jiang, you can park the car on the lawn. There's plenty of space there," Yang Qingqing said enthusiastically. But Jiang Lusher looked at her and asked, "Is there a car in the garage?" "There is. We have several cars," Yang Qingqing replied. At this moment, Jiang Zhuing said, "You want to use the garage, big brother?" "Sure. Anyway, our cars are usually just parked all over the place. Haizi, call someone to move them." "Huh?" Zhang Hai was stunned. "Since when do we park all over the place?" Yang Qingqing felt a bit overlooked. Her kind suggestion had been ignored, and now she felt dismissed. She looked at Jiang Lusher and Jiang Zhuing and felt even more contempt toward Jiang Lusher than before. Such a crappy car, and he insists on parking it in the garage. While using the garage wasn't a big deal, Yang Qingqing thought it wasn't worth the trouble for a vehicle like that. "Once the car's parked, I'll take you to your room. Don't worry, even though it's the apocalypse, our living conditions are still decent," Jiang Zhuing said. "No need. I'll sleep in the vehicle. Also, how do you open the garage?" As for living conditions, Jiang Lusher's RV was already more than good enough. In the end, Jiang Lusher not only arranged his bedroom in the vehicle but also took the only garage key with him. They had only found one garage key in the house. In reality, the starseed was in Jiang Lusher's mind, and the base vehicle was bound to it. Without Jiang Lusher, no one could drive it, or even open its door. Still, Jiang Lusher was so cautious. Even though this was his sister Jiang Zhuing's territory, he felt that as long as people were around, one should never fully let their guard down. Seeing that the first thing Jiang Lusher did after arriving was fuss over his minibus, Yang Qingqing and the others were baffled. Since meeting him, Yang Qingqing had always thought Jiang Lusher was a bumpkin, acting like his pile of junk was something special. He probably didn't even know what an ability user was. If not for Jiang Zhuing, they never would have accepted such a survivor, not even worth a second glance. Probably because he's hauling everything he owns, that's why he cares so much. And that RV, he probably sees it as a treasure. But come on, there are tons of luxury RVs out there, and he picked a converted minibus? He doesn't even know what kind of vehicle is actually worth something. Yang Qingqing whispered to the woman who didn't talk much, shaking her head. That's how ordinary people are. Because they can only struggle to survive in the apocalypse, they end up clinging to things that make others feel a mix of pity and amusement. Not long after settling in, Jiang Zhuing came knocking to call for dinner. There was a door in the garage that connected directly to the inside of the villa. Jiang Lusher had asked for the key to that door as well. Usually, he stayed inside the garage, in a completely enclosed space, effectively separated from the other survivors. The villa was large. Even with more than 20 survivors, it didn't feel crowded. These survivors each had their own roles. According to Jiang Zhuing's introduction, aside from those who took turns staying behind to guard the base, all the able-bodied men and women went out to search for food. Those with no combat ability, like the injured or women who were too weak, stayed behind to cook and clean. With so many people living under one roof, if logistics didn't keep up, it would have turned into a trash heap long ago. Besides that, there was even a doctor in their survivor team. This made Jiang Lushur sigh with emotion. This team was actually well organized, with everything it should have. At that moment, most of the survivors were gathered in the living room, sorting through all kinds of supplies they had gathered today. When they saw Jiang Zhuing bringing Jiang Lushur over, everyone looked up. That's the boss's brother? His name's Jiang Lushur, right? Someone asked Yang Qingqing beside them. That's right, Yang Qingqing replied in a low voice. Oh? That person instantly showed a knowing look. The way they looked at Jiang Lushur seemed to say, so that's the guy Yang Qingqing was talking about. If Yang Qingqing hadn't mentioned it, just by his appearance, they wouldn't have guessed he was such an oddball. They had all seen Jiang Lushur come out from the small door in the garage. What Yang Qingqing and the others said was true, this guy really did move into the garage just for a modified RV. While Jiang Lushur was staying in the garage, Yang Qingqing and the others had already subtly spread the story of his deeds. Some people hadn't even met him yet but had already formed a preconceived opinion. A country bumpkin, and a weird one, too. Everyone, this is my brother, Jiang Lushur, Jiang Zhuing introduced proudly, her tone almost sounding like, see? Isn't my brother handsome? Hearing that, everyone had the urge to roll their eyes. Hello, brother Jiang. Nice to meet you. You really came from Jiangbei? That's badass. Everyone came forward to greet him warmly. Even though they knew Jiang Lushur was strange, they couldn't ignore Jiang Zhuing's presence. Jiang Lushur also nodded to them. Hello, everyone. All right, let's eat, Jiang Zhuing said, then turned to Jiang Lushur and added, come eat with me, bro. The moment she said that, all the survivors froze. Yang Qingqing and the others looked at Jiang Zhuing in surprise. Their survivor team had 4 ability users, including Jiang Zhuing. Normally, the regular survivors ate in the living room, while the 4 ability users ate separately in the kitchen. They also ate different food. Yang Qingqing couldn't hold it in anymore. She smiled and said, Zhuing, isn't that unnecessary? Brother Jiang isn't an ability user. It won't help him anyway. That's what the other survivors were thinking too, including the ordinary ones. Eating is still better than not eating, Jiang Zhuing said casually. If there was something good, of course she'd want to share it with Jiang Lushur. The survivors were speechless. What kind of logic was that? What, is there a problem? According to the original agreement, whether as the leader or based on combat contribution, I have more share than anyone else. I usually use my share to trade weapons with the military, and everyone uses those weapons together. Now I'm using my share for my brother. Does anyone have a problem with that? Jiang Zhuing swept her gaze over the survivors. Jiang Lushur immediately noticed that her expression had turned sharp. The survivors quickly averted their eyes and said nothing. If Jiang Zhuing hadn't brought it up just now, they'd almost forgotten about that rule. When someone doesn't use their rights for a long time, others get used to it and assume they've given them up. It had started to feel like Jiang Zhuing using her share to trade for weapons was just the norm. But now that she was using it for herself, they didn't dare complain to her directly, but they were clearly displeased with the person benefiting, Jiang Lushur. Yang Qingqing was momentarily stuck, then forced a smile and said, yeah, you're the boss. You decide. Come on, bro, let's eat, Jiang Zhuing said, pulling Jiang Lushur along. Seeing the others' reactions, Jiang Lushur became curious, just how good was the food the ability users got? Now that an ordinary person was mixed in with the 4 ability users, the regular survivors peeked toward the kitchen. Some of them immediately felt a sense of imbalance. Normally, when only the ability users ate separately, no one minded. But now that someone just like them was allowed in, they started to feel uncomfortable. But they couldn't do anything, he was Jiang Zhuing's brother. All they could do was envy that he had such a powerful sister. Brother Jiang, what you're about to eat might be the best thing you've had in your life, Zhang Hai said cheerfully at the table. Yang Qingqing didn't say anything, but in her heart she looked down on it. To Jiang Lushur, sure, it might taste good. But it was completely wasted on him since it wouldn't actually benefit him. Hearing Zhang Hai say that, Jiang Lushur became even more curious. Did they have a 5-star chef in this team? Soon, the food was served. Jiang Zhuing immediately gave Jiang Lushur a piece. As soon as Jiang Lushur chewed twice, he paused in surprise. the texture, and the warm feeling spreading through his body. This was mutant beast meat. Jiang Lushur quickly picked up another piece. This time he chewed more carefully and confirmed, it was definitely mutant beast meat. Seeing him stuff another piece into his mouth before even swallowing the first, Yang Qingqing and the others looked down on him. Even if it's tasty, no need to gobble it like that, right? He probably spent the trip to Jinling eating nothing but biscuits and instant noodles, or maybe not even that. How is it, brother Jiang? Tastes good, right? Yang Qingqing asked with a smile. Jiang Lushur nodded. Not bad. He wasn't sure what kind of mutant beast this was, but the meat was still a bit inferior to that of the mutant wild boar. Hearing Jiang Lushur's casual, not bad, Yang Qingqing didn't know what to say. This guy clearly had no idea how valuable mutant beast meat was. This isn't just any meat, it's from a mutant beast. It's specially for ability users. It helps restore physical energy and can promote evolution. If saved, it can even be traded with the military for weapons. But what effect it has on ordinary people, we don't know. Yang Qingqing explained. Evolution? Jiang Lushur ignored her last sentence. Of course it was useful for ordinary people. But as for how ability users evolved, Starseed hadn't gone into detail. It had only said they could evolve, without explaining how. Unbelievable, right? Ability users can evolve. Using your powers and eating mutant beast meat both help with evolution. Using your powers also helps you practice control, Yang Qingqing continued. She figured that after hearing this, Jiang Lushur would finally realize the meat was wasted on him. If he had any shame, he'd offer to eat with the regular survivors instead. But unexpectedly, Jiang Lushur just nodded while eating and even picked up another piece. Then he said to her, I see. Interesting. Go on. Yang Qingqing was choked up again. This guy just didn't get it. And saying things like, pretty interesting, and asking her to keep talking, did he think she was telling stories for fun? Yang Qingqing forced a smile and said, actually, there's nothing more to say. If you like the food, then eat more. You probably didn't eat much on the road, so eat up, Jiang Zhuing said, then turned her head and called out, big sis, make another stir-fried pork dish. Brother, eat more to replenish your nutrition, Jiang Zhuing urged, continuously picking food for Jiang Lushur. Yang Qingqing really couldn't stand it anymore. Her face was already showing signs of discomfort. Her share was limited, and she always ate sparingly. Seeing an ordinary person like Jiang Lushur, who got no benefit from eating this food, eating so freely made her feel really stifled. By the way, Zhuing, didn't you want that custom weapon? Yang Qingqing's eyes lit up as she suddenly spoke. Custom weapon? Jiang Lushur looked puzzled. Yang Qingqing opened her mouth to explain, but Jiang Zhuing already started explaining to Jiang Lushur, it's a weapon made by the military. They have the technology, materials, and equipment to make it. Many survivors in Jinling City work with the military. We can collect food ourselves, but for weapons, we need to trade with them. The military changes what they accept frequently, they'll take anything, but things like mutant beast meat and medicine are long-term trade goods, Jiang Zhuing continued, noticing Jiang Lushur's curiosity about the military. But if there was a military presence, why didn't these survivors, especially the ordinary ones, just go with the military? Before Jiang Lushur could ask, Jiang Zhuing continued, well, it's called the military, but really it's just a forward base left by the army. The main force has already withdrawn, and only about 1,000 people are left. Their base is limited in size, and although they do accept some survivors, there's a cap. They say they don't have the manpower to escort everyone to the safe zone. So the survivors live there without knowing when they'll be transferred. According to Jiang Zhuing, there was a safe zone near Jinling too, supposedly in the mountains, with difficult terrain. Just like the safe island, it was in a remote location. Then you need supplies to trade for that custom weapon, right? How much do you need? Jiang Lushur asked. It takes a full 5 tons of mutant beast meat. Zhuing was slowly saving up, Yang Qingqing quickly answered. But she was interrupted again by Jiang Zhuing. Hey, there's no rush. Besides, haven't we already saved up quite a bit? Saying that, she suddenly remembered something, reached into her pocket and took something out, then said mysteriously, speaking of mutant beasts, bro, here's something you've definitely never seen. Just this little piece can be traded to the military for 1 ton of mutant beast meat. What is it? Jiang Lushur asked curiously. Jiang Zhuing held out her fair, slender hand in front of him and smiled slightly as she opened her palm. Look! Jiang Lushur looked down and saw a crystal-clear bead lying in her palm. Isn't that a mutant crystal core? His eyes lit up instantly. To activate the biological lab in his base vehicle, Jiang Lushur needed 2 mutant crystal cores. Originally, he thought it would be very difficult, Just killing one mutant wild boar was already hard enough, let alone two. When he found out about Jiang Zhuying's survivor team, he immediately thought that using her people would be much more efficient. But he didn't expect to see a mutant crystal core from her so soon. Thinking about it, Jiang Lusha realized he had been a bit dumb. He was literally eating mutant beast meat. It was obvious they had mutant crystal cores. The survivor team hunted mutant beasts to trade for weapons, and ability users needed the meat to evolve and replenish strength. Of course they'd have hunted mutated beasts. But the price the military offered made Jiang Lusha feel speechless. A single mutant beast usually only had one crystal core inside it. Its value far exceeded that of 1 ton of meat. In fact, it was much more valuable than the meat. What does the military want this for? Jiang Lusha asked. This is a mutant crystal core. The military seems to be researching the mutation virus with it, Jiang Zhuying said. The military had only recently started looking into the crystal cores, they were still in the research phase. When Jiang Lusha heard that, he realized the military didn't yet know the true value of the crystal cores. Once they found out, and once other survivors realized it too, these cores would become extremely precious. I see. Zhuying, can I talk to you about something? Jiang Lusha said after thinking for a moment. There's no need for formalities. Whatever it is, just say it, brother. Jiang Zhuying was tossing the core up and down in her palm. The bead looked like glass, and as a girl, she seemed to like it quite a bit. I want that mutant crystal core. It's important to me. When Jiang Lusha said that, Jiang Zhuying had no reaction, but everyone else immediately turned their eyes to him. Yang Qingqing stared at him in disbelief. Did he even know what he was saying? That thing was worth a whole ton of mutant beast meat. And how could that possibly be important to him? He was probably seeing one for the first time. The others also frowned. Eating some mutant beast meat was one thing, but now Jiang Lusha was starting to make demands. This was too much. Even if Jiang Zhuying was their leader, this was outrageous. It felt like he was just leeching off his sister. If she gave it to him, her credibility in the team would drop dramatically. If she didn't give it, well, judging by how she treated Jiang Lusha, she'd agree to anything he asked. Just then, Jiang Lusha continued, Zhuying, didn't you need mutant beast meat? I happen to have some. Let me trade you for the crystal core. After butchering the mutant wild boar, he had about 4 or 5 tons of meat. He had eaten a bit of it since then, but only a small amount. Zhuying had already saved some herself, so he only needed to give her part of his. Everyone looked at Jiang Lusha. From the moment he said he wanted the crystal core, every word that came out of his mouth had shocked them more and more. Huh? You have mutant beast meat, brother? How did you get it? Even Jiang Zhuying was stunned. Did her brother really have meat? But she trusted Jiang Lusha unconditionally. Even if it sounded unbelievable, she didn't doubt him for a second. The others were also completely stunned. Wasn't Jiang Lusha an ordinary person? Hold on. Jiang Lusha went into the garage. After a while, he drove the small cargo trailer out. That banged-up, awful-looking trailer, which they had all thought was full of junk and luggage. All the survivors gathered at the door, even forgetting about dinner. They watched as Jiang Lusha got off the minibus and opened the trailer's cargo door. Clunk. The wobbly door sounded like it might fall apart. Thump 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 thump. Large chunks of meat rolled out of the cargo trailer. Bright red, lean pork that looked mouth-wateringly delicious. A faint aroma spread through the air. Just one whiff was enough to know, it was mutant beast meat. Jiang Zhuying stared wide-eyed at the mutant pork, and the other survivors couldn't believe what they were seeing. There really was meat. And so much of it. At that moment, Jiang Lusha leaned out of the driver's seat and asked, "Is this enough?" Jiang Zhuying was stunned for a second, then quickly nodded. Yes, yes. How much is here? She ran over and saw that the trailer was still filled with mutant meat. 4 or 5 tons, Jiang Lusha said. So much. Jiang Zhuying was even more shocked. She quickly shook her head. That's too much. I only need 2 tons. You don't have to give me the rest. No, take all of it, Jiang Lusha replied. He had planned to give it all to her from the start. That way, others wouldn't get any funny ideas. Sure enough, while everyone had different expressions, shock, disbelief, even thinking they were hallucinating, no one showed greed. For ordinary survivors, even if they got the meat, they wouldn't survive long enough to trade it. For ability users, what they'd get in exchange wasn't worth opposing Jiang Zhuying. Still, they couldn't believe Jiang Lusha was the one who had brought all that meat. That raggedy, despised little trailer was filled with mutant beast meat. Zhuying, I want to ask you one more thing, Jiang Lusha continued. Jiang Zhuying had been about to refuse all the meat, but paused and said, "What is it, brother? The next time you kill a mutant beast and get a crystal core, can you give it to me too?" Jiang Lusha asked. 4 or 5 tons of meat, according to the military's price, could trade for almost 5 crystal cores. Jiang Lushi only needed 2. To the others, this felt like Jiang Lushi was practically giving his sister a family discount. Before, they had envied Jiang Lushi for having such a good sister. Now, they were envious of Jiang Zhuiying for having such a good brother. So much meat, just like that. Hearing his request, Jiang Zhuiying naturally had no objections. Sure. Brother Jiang, how did you get that mutant beast meat? Yang Qingqing couldn't hold it in anymore and asked. It was the question everyone had. How could an ordinary person get mutant beast meat? Oh, that? I picked it up, Jiang Lushi replied, making everyone choke on their breath. Picked up? Picked up a mutant beast? How did you pick it up? Yang Qingqing asked again, holding back her frustration. I saw a mutant wild boar crash into a tree and die while I was passing by, Jiang Lushi answered with a straight face. A mutant wild boar crashed into a tree and died? Shouldn't the tree have been the unlucky one? But since Jiang Lushi had already said that, even though no one believed it, they had no way to keep questioning him. Besides, they really couldn't think of any other way he could have gotten the meat. Maybe it was roadkill, or fell off a cliff? What ridiculous luck. The mutant crystal core was handed over to Jiang Lushi. Holding the warm core in his hand, a smile appeared on his face. This core was truly worth a fortune. Now, he only needed one more core to activate the biological lab. Having suddenly gathered all the required mutant beast meat, Jiang Zhuiying immediately prepared to exchange it for weapons. As the leader and strongest ability user in the team, the weapons she traded for would directly improve the team's overall safety and combat power. So the mutant beast meat and crystal core needed for the trade were originally contributed by the whole team. Now, it was equivalent to the team owing Jiang Lushi 1 mutant crystal core. Brother, we're going into the city today to exchange for weapons. I'll show you when I get back. Early in the morning, Jiang Zhuiying knocked on the door excitedly. This survivor team was actually based in the suburbs of Jinling, not in the core part of the city. Only in the outskirts could survivors live. The closer to the city, the more it became a forbidden zone for the living. In many areas, people couldn't even get near. Entering the city was a very dangerous thing for Jiang Zhuiying and the others. With a permanent population of 8 million and a floating population exceeding 10 million, more than 90% of them had turned into zombies. With so many zombies, it felt endless. Even ability users, once surrounded by zombies in Jinling City, would only be left to wait for death in despair. The more zombies you killed, the more came. It only brought despair. And in Jinling City, the danger didn't only come from zombies. Some mutant beasts also roamed the city. They had originated in urban environments and continued to move through the city after mutating. These mutant beasts hid in tall buildings and were even more dangerous. However, what Jiang Zhuiying was referring to when she said, going into the city, wasn't Jinling itself, that was too dangerous. She meant a satellite city, temporarily built by the military. But even going to the satellite city wasn't without danger. The route passed through an area dense with zombies. This was also why many nearby survivors couldn't reach the military for help. Only strong teams like Jiang Zhuiying's had the capability to go exchange with the military. Weaker survivors couldn't even gather anything the military wanted. If all goes well, we'll be back by afternoon. Maybe I'll even find some snacks in a roadside store to bring back for you, Jiang Zhuiying said brightly. No need. I'll go with you, Jiang Lushi said. Huh? Jiang Zhuiying's smile instantly froze. 5 tons of mutant beast meat were loaded into a refrigerated truck. At the same time, 2 off-road vehicles drove from the lawn to the front of the villa. One of them had a light machine gun mounted on it. That vehicle was used to clear the road. It was also Jiang Zhuiying's ride. The light machine gun was the team's most valuable and important weapon. Because bullets were insanely expensive, they rarely used it. As for Yang Qingqing and the other core fighters, they sat in the refrigerated truck and the second off-road vehicle. The second off-road vehicle, which brought up the rear, had been slightly modified. Iron chains with spikes were hung from the back, and many of the seats had been removed so those inside could turn and attack zombies that got close. As for the refrigerated truck, 2 full layers of steel plates had been welded onto it. Though the welds were ugly and the truck looked bulky, it was a solid, turtle shell meant to protect supplies. These materials were earned with their lives. They couldn't afford to lose even one shipment. The team was very proud of these 3 vehicles. They were their lifeline. But today, even though the vehicles were ready to leave, Jiang Zhuiying still hadn't shown up. The driver's seat of the lead vehicle, where she normally sat, remained empty. Where's the boss? Zhang Hai asked. She's talking to her brother. Probably has a lot to say, Yang Qingqing replied. All right, the garage door just opened, looks like they're done talking, Zhang Hai suddenly said. The garage door slowly opened. "Let's get in the car," Yang Qingqing said as she looked at the garage door and walked toward the last off-road vehicle. But just then, she paused and turned back to look. The minibus was coming out? And in the front passenger seat, wasn't that Jiang Zhuiying? Could it be that Jiang Lushe really intended to go with them? "Zhuiying, we're about to leave," Yang Qingqing walked over and said. Jiang Zhuiying looked at her from inside the vehicle and nodded. It's about time." But although she said that, she remained firmly seated inside the minibus, with no intention of getting out. "He really is coming with us," Yang Qingqing said helplessly. Forget it, if he wanted to come, she couldn't stop him. "There's space in the lead vehicle. Zhuiying and brother Jiang can ride together," someone offered. Jiang Lushe shook his head. "No need, I'll drive my own vehicle." "No problem. This time, we'll bring up the rear and follow behind you," Jiang Zhuiying added. Yang Qingqing nodded, then whispered to the other survivors as she returned to the off-road vehicle. "Zhuiying listens to her brother way too much. This must have been his idea again. What's he coming for?" "No idea." The off-road vehicles and the refrigerated truck started moving. Jiang Lushe followed behind them in the minibus. The convoy looked extremely odd. Jiang Lushe wanted to come along not just because of the danger, he was worried about Jiang Zhuiying, but also because he was curious about the military and the satellite city. He wanted to know what else the military exchanged for, aside from mutant beast meat. According to Jiang Zhuiying, the military frequently changed their demand list. They were always in need of different items. Even though their main force had evacuated with some survivors to the safe zone, that didn't mean they had given up on the cities or on humanity's homeland. Even setting aside the idea of reclaiming their home, the massive number of zombies, the dangerous mutant beasts, and the unknown behavior of the virus were all critical matters. The establishment of the satellite city in Jinling wasn't just for resource collection, it was also for monitoring the situation inside Jinling, studying the zombies and mutant beasts, and collecting enough samples to study the virus. That was the real purpose of the satellite city. The convoy soon left the villa compound. The lead off-road vehicle skillfully turned into a small alleyway, and after a few more turns, the road ahead suddenly opened up. They had arrived on the main road. At that moment, Jiang Lushe saw the muscular man from earlier climbing out of the lead off-road vehicle and positioning himself behind the light machine gun. This was a road that must be taken to reach the satellite city. According to Jiang Zhuiying, the other routes would only be even more dangerous than this one. Although this area, all the way to the satellite city, was still part of the outskirts of Jinling, in a place like Jinling, every inch of land was precious. Large residential areas, high-tech zones, and schools had all been built in the suburbs. So, the population here was by no means small. A large population base meant a large number of zombies. Seeing that the muscular man had already gotten into position, Jiang Lushe also silently checked the condition of the vehicle through the starseed, as he usually did. Base vehicle shell intact, power system intact, air cannon functional, the starseed's voice reported. Jiang Zhuiying held the iron rod diagonally in her arms, leaning back in the front passenger seat. Her large eyes stared ahead brightly. "Brother, get ready for a show." "A show?" Jiang Lushe asked, confused. The vehicle was moving at a fast pace, and soon, zombies began to appear ahead. These zombies had originally been wandering the streets aimlessly like ghosts, but as soon as they heard the vroom of the car engines, they immediately turned their heads, attracted by the sound. Their blood-red eyes locked onto the approaching vehicles, and they let out hoarse, ha-ha growls before suddenly charging forward. As the vehicles approached, more and more zombies came rushing out from houses and alleys on both sides of the road. In the blink of an eye, the convoy was surrounded by zombies from front, back, and both sides. Especially in front, just one glance showed an endless mass. These zombies had blood-red eyes, twisted and ferocious faces, and wide-open mouths. Their gums were also blood-red, and between their teeth were strands of flesh and blood. When there are no living humans to eat, they will even attack each other. But when they are inactive, their energy consumption is very low. Toward living people, zombies are extremely aggressive. They only attack each other when they need to eat. That's why when no living humans are around, they just wander aimlessly. But once a human appears, this kind of scene happens immediately. Seeing so many zombies charging at once gave people the feeling of falling into a sea of corpses. A sense of despair naturally arose. The horror of zombies wasn't just in their combat power, they also had a strong psychological impact on ordinary people. Faced with such a crowd of zombies, everyone felt their scalps tingle involuntarily. At that moment, gunfire suddenly rang out. Rat-tat-tat-tat. The light machine gun spat out flames. Bullets rained down into the zombie horde, and the first row of zombies immediately fell in bunches. But then, the terrifying vitality of zombies showed itself. They felt no pain. Unless their heads were blown off, the others that were shot would immediately get up and charge again. Some zombies just staggered from the impact and didn't even stop. One zombie was shot in the abdomen. The motion of running tore open its muscles, even spilling its intestines, yet it still came charging forward. But soon, the smell of blood attracted other zombies, and they pounced on it from behind. The survivors were long used to these bloody scenes. Jiang Liusher's expression didn't change either. At first, he'd felt a bit disgusted, but now he felt nothing at all. He had seen things far more disgusting than this. Jiang Zhuiying had originally worried that Jiang Liusher might get nervous seeing so many zombies. But when she looked at him, she found that his hands on the steering wheel were steady, not shaking at all, and his expression was calm. At that moment, the light machine gun stopped firing and slowed down. Compared to the gun itself, the bullets were far more valuable, so they couldn't rely on shooting endlessly. That round of shooting had only been to create some corpses and slightly disrupt the forward momentum of the horde. V-Room. The refrigerated truck overtook it and became the lead vehicle. It drove straight into the zombie horde. Inside, Zhang Hai's eyes were wide open, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, and his foot floored the gas pedal. The zombies got closer and closer, he could almost see their hands reaching for the car. Boom! With a dull thud, the refrigerated truck jolted. It had plowed straight into the zombie horde, smashing through the ones in front. The windshield of the refrigerated truck was mostly covered with steel plates, leaving only a small gap at the driver's side, which was also reinforced with wire mesh. Seeing the flailing zombies fall one by one in front of the truck, Zhang Hai got extremely excited. He slammed the horn twice and laughed loudly. Damn it. Die, all of you. Awesome. This feels amazing. The zombies posed a huge threat, but driving an armored car like this to crush them was exhilarating for Zhang Hai. His face turned red with excitement, and veins bulged on the backs of his hands. As they drove deeper into the horde, even though the gas pedal was floored, the truck's speed inevitably slowed down. The vehicle groaned as if it were getting stuck, completely surrounded by zombies. Clank, clank, clank. The iron plates covering the truck's exterior began to dent. The pressure and impact from the zombies were immense. Though the plates were thickened, they still seemed to struggle under the force. Boom! Suddenly, a loud bang came from below. One of the refrigerated truck's tires burst, releasing a puff of blue smoke. The truck had clearly been modified, it had 12 tires in total. The blown one only made the vehicle wobble slightly, without major impact. Still, losing one tire so soon made people worried about the rest. Ah! Don't panic. Damn it, it's just a tire. Zhang Hai shouted. At that moment, an ability user climbed onto the roof of the refrigerated truck. The last off-road vehicle followed behind. Yang Qingqing's figure emerged from its sunroof. The two ability users began to attack at the same time. The one on the truck roof held a long spear-like fork. He was practically hanging off the side, but his feet were so steady it was like he'd grown roots, he never fell off. His body swayed with the vehicle, and each time he thrust his fork, it pierced clean through a zombie's head. Yang Qingqing's action surprised Jiang Liusher. She actually climbed out of the sunroof, holding 2-foot-long knives in her hands. Then she suddenly leapt down, straight into the zombie horde. The sight made everyone's hearts clench. But the moment she landed, she spun on the spot like an agile top. Except this top gleamed with cold light, her two blades slashed open the throats and chests of the surrounding zombies. Before the others could surround her, Yang Qingqing sprang back up and lightly landed on the roof of the car. The whole thing took only a second. It was like she had springs in her legs. They both mutated differently. That guy grew some kind of webbed pads under his feet, he can grip any surface. As for Yang Qingqing, her leg muscles mutated, giving her incredible jumping power, Jiang Zhuiying explained. Jiang Liusher nodded in understanding. These two had ability mutations similar to what he imagined. Like Brother Yu, their bodies had partially mutated. But Jiang Zhuiying's case was different, her entire body cells had mutated into discharge cells. As she continued to evolve, the electricity she could release would only increase. No one knew how far that might go. Earlier, in Jiang Liusher's vehicle, when they were still several meters from the zombies, Jiang Zhuiying's electricity had already killed them. The zombies were charred black, and when the minibus rolled over them, only piles of coal-like remains were left on the ground. Such terrifying destructive power couldn't be matched by ability users with partial mutations. This is awesome. All of you, just die already. Zhang Hai's excited shouts echoed inside the base vehicle. With cover from Yang Qingqing and the other ability user, the refrigerated truck no longer encountered any obstacles and bumped and jostled its way forward, crushing zombies as it went. Zhang Hai's shouting completely drowned out everything else, as if it was the only way to express his excitement. At this moment, the lead off-road vehicle had already slowed down and pulled up beside the minibus. Beep beep. The off-road vehicle honked twice. Jiang Zhuing looked toward the off-road vehicle, and the muscular man popped his head out of the sunroof again and shouted, "Boss! There's a large horde of zombies up ahead. We need to accelerate. Can you keep up, brother?" Jiang Zhuing looked at Jiang Lusher. Their off-road vehicles and the refrigerated truck had all been modified and were much faster than the vehicle's original speed. The muscular man was obviously worried that the minibus might fall behind. That's why he came over to remind them. If Jiang Liusher's vehicle couldn't keep up, they would abandon the minibus and move to one of the off-road vehicles. Jiang Lusher shook his head. "Tell them not to worry, we can keep up." "Okay." Jiang Zhuing immediately turned and said, "It's fine, go ahead." The muscular man paused for a second, then said, "All right." Since Jiang Zhuing agreed, they would just let Jiang Lusher decide for himself. Besides, he figured the minibus's engine must have been modified. After all, the inside was a luxury RV. The off-road vehicle drove alongside for a bit, honked again, then suddenly accelerated. Beep beep beep. The other two vehicles also honked once each, and all three vehicles sped up together. From the minibus, which had a higher vantage point, Jiang Lusher looked ahead and was shocked. In the distance, there was indeed a densely packed zombie area, twice as many as before. Vroom vroom vroom. The engines roared loudly, and the three vehicles shot out thick exhaust as they accelerated toward the zombie horde. At that moment, Jiang Lusher hadn't started accelerating yet. The distance between them quickly widened, then suddenly, Jiang Lusher slammed down on the gas. Boom boom boom. A few zombies smashed into the minibus, and in that moment of impact, the vehicle shot forward, quickly catching up to the rear of the convoy. "Wow!" Jiang Zhuing exclaimed. The modifications on this car were really good. The acceleration was smooth and incredibly fast. Hearing Jiang Zhuing's exclamation, Jiang Lusher smiled slightly. This was just normal acceleration. If she saw the full burst acceleration, who knows how shocked she'd be. Even though those off-road vehicles were modified, their acceleration couldn't compare to the base vehicle. If it came down to it, they could only eat dust behind the minibus. Yang Qingqing jumped back onto the vehicle again, blood still dripping from her two long knives. She accidentally glanced back, and was stunned. That minibus was keeping up so closely? From the front came Zhang Hai's voice, "Boss, are you keeping up?" Yang Qingqing looked at the minibus in surprise, then snapped back to herself and said impatiently, "We're keeping up." But in that moment of distraction, a zombie suddenly jumped onto the fast-moving off-road vehicle, grabbed the luggage rack, and quickly climbed up. Smelling a wave of blood from behind, Yang Qingqing let out a sharp cry, twisted her body, and leapt behind the zombie. As it turned, both of her blades stabbed down. "Disgusting!" Yang Qingqing kicked the corpse off the car. At that moment, she didn't have the energy to care about the minibus anymore. Getting through this zombie horde was very dangerous, but at this rate, they could manage it. Some zombies would chase them for a while but would eventually give up and wander off again. The road ahead was relatively safer. Fortunately, the area wasn't too large. Soon, the convoy broke through the horde. 10 minutes later, they reached an open area and stopped. Yang Qingqing and the others jumped out and dealt with a dozen zombies that had followed them there. At that moment, Jiang Lusher also stopped the minibus in the open area. "How's the car?" Jiang Zhuing got out and walked over to ask. The drivers of the two off-road vehicles and Zhang Hai, who had gotten out of the refrigerated truck, were all inspecting their vehicles. After charging through the horde, they had to check and repair before continuing. The two off-road vehicles were okay, just minor damage, nothing serious. But the refrigerated truck looked worse. Still, the dents on the outside didn't really affect the metal plates. They could still be used. But the blown tire was a real problem. Zhang Hai walked around the refrigerated truck and saw Jiang Lusher looking over from inside his vehicle. He immediately grinned. "How is it, big bro? My truck's not bad, right? It's run over who knows how many zombies and still holding strong." "You blew a tire," Jiang Lusher said. The tire had been completely shredded. When the truck was surrounded by zombies, it might have been bitten through. "Ha ha ha, just a blown tire. No big deal." Zhang Hai laughed. "Oh right, big bro, do you know what my ability is?" Zhang Hai suddenly asked. Jiang Lusher paused. He actually didn't know what Zhang Hai's ability was. He'd seen the others use their abilities, but realized that Zhang Hai had only been driving and hadn't made a move yet. "So what is your ability?" Jiang Lusher asked curiously. "Heh, perfect timing. Big bro, just watch closely," Zhang Hai said in a poorly imitated Beijing accent. Alright. Jiang Lushi thought Zhang Hai was going to demonstrate something. But after rolling up his sleeves, Zhang Hai didn't start fighting. Instead, he pulled a spare tire out of the refrigerated truck. I've got several tires in here. I'm not afraid of blowouts. Zhang Hai said proudly. So that means you blow out tires often, Jiang Lushi thought to himself. But he still couldn't tell what Zhang Hai's ability had to do with the tire. Zhang Hai carried the tire over to the blown-out one. He pulled out a jack to lift the truck, then cracked his knuckles, flexing his 10 fingers that looked like carrots. Big bro, watch this. This is my specialty. Zhang Hai said, and suddenly his hands moved so fast they became a blur. His speed was incredible, and his strength was clearly high too. The flexibility of his fingers was amazing. And what was he doing? Changing a tire. He didn't use any tools, not even a wrench. He twisted the bolts on and off with just his hands. While changing the tire, Zhang Hai boasted, "How about that, big bro? Not bad, right? My fingers mutated, they're super fast and super strong. Look, all muscle." Jiang Lushi stared blankly for a while before finally asking, "Can I ask, what did you do before?" "Mechanic. Ha 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 ha." Zhang Hai used to be a car mechanic. After mutating into an ability user, he combined his powers with his skills and continued doing his old job. In terms of combat strength, he was certainly stronger than an ordinary person, but among the 4 ability users in the team, he ranked at the bottom. However, his role was by no means unimportant. All the modifications and repairs of their vehicles were done by him alone. Even so, Zhang Hai's goofy personality and this strange power made him somewhat lacking in status. Not to mention, Yang Qingqing always looked down on him, often speaking with impatience. Jiang Lushi thought that this power was definitely not limited to fixing cars. Just the strength in those fingers alone could probably pierce a person like a bullet. To this, Zhang Hai laughed and said, "I'm not cut out for fighting. As soon as I start, I go crazy, can't stay rational." He paused, his smile slowly fading, and his tone grew heavy. This was the first time Jiang Lushi had seen such an expression on his face. "I don't know why, but I always see the image of my wife reaching out to me for help from among the zombies. I had just woken up then. If only I could have fought harder, faster. Forget it, no point talking about this." Zhang Hai forced a smile and went back to work. In fact, Zhang Hai probably knew that no matter how fast he was back then, he couldn't have saved his wife. But knowing doesn't mean you can move on from that memory. Most survivors had gone through similar tragedies. "Brother, in a little while we'll be at the satellite city." Jiang Zhuiying came over from the off-road vehicle with a bottle of water and handed it to Jiang Lushi. Everyone was drinking bottled water, replenishing their lost fluids and energy in time. Jiang Lushi noticed that the ability users were also carrying some dried mutant beast meat and were eating it with water. Using powers consumed a lot of energy, and only mutant beast meat could quickly replenish it. Ordinary food could help too, but the required amount would be much greater. It wasn't as portable and didn't help ability users evolve. Soon, the tire on the refrigerated truck was replaced. Everyone had drunk their water, eaten their meat, and rested. The convoy got back on the road, continuing toward the satellite city. From here, it would take just over 10 minutes to reach the satellite city. There were still plenty of zombies along the way. The streets were packed with them. Hearing the sound, the zombies surged forward. From a distance, it looked like a dark wave rolling toward them. Ah! Zhang Hai floored the gas pedal, charging forward under the cover of Yang Qingqing and the others, crashing and crushing zombies as he pushed through the horde. This time they were lucky, no tires blew out, though the vehicle got more dents and scrapes from the collisions. The satellite city was already close. They just needed to break through this last horde. At that moment, a sudden roar came from nearby. The sound was deep, like it came from the throat, and it didn't seem far away. Hearing the roar, Jiang Zhuiying sat up straight, a serious look appearing on her face. She listened carefully again, then quickly shouted, "Watch out!" Boom! A part of the zombie horde was shoved aside. Many zombies were even flung into the air. Right after that, a massive black shadow charged out, heading straight for the convoy. The black figure was about the size of an off-road vehicle, and its speed was just as fast. Its mouth was wide open, revealing sharp canine teeth. Its eyes were blood red. It was a mutant dog. In the cities, many people kept pet dogs, and there were also countless strays in the suburbs. These dogs all became infected, and after the apocalypse, most mutated into zombie-like monsters. A few, however, became mutant beasts. This size. Jiang Zhuiying's expression changed instantly. Mutant beasts came in all sizes, but this one was the biggest they had encountered so far. A level 1+ mutant dog. The starseed's detection showed that this was a level 1+ mutant dog. 1+ referred to its mutation energy level, but at this stage, the difference in combat power from size, strength, and speed was still massive. Even with the same energy level, actual combat strength varied greatly. This mutant dog was enormous, incredibly strong, and shockingly fast. As soon as the convoy spotted it, the mutant dog was already near. Boom! The mutant dog crashed into the refrigerated truck, sending it flying sideways and slamming hard into the roadside flower bed. Just as the truck hit, the mutant dog was already on it, slashing a paw. Its gleaming claws were each half a foot long. With terrifying force, the claws tore into the thick iron plates covering the truck like paper, leaving deep gashes. 2 pieces of packed mutant beast meat rolled out from the slashed opening, even the freezer had been cut open, showing just how deadly the attack was. With just one strike, the mutant dog sent chills down everyone's spine. Shit! Shit! Zhang Hai screamed inside the cab. His refrigerated truck could crush zombies, but in front of this mutant dog, it was like a plastic toy, completely useless. A few more swipes and the truck would be totaled. The mutant dog was almost the same size as the truck. Its blood-red eyes stared into the cab at Zhang Hai. It bared its fangs, thick, red drool dripping from its mouth and splashing onto the ground. Zhang Hai, staring from just a few feet away, felt his scalp tingle. With a scream, he slammed the gas pedal and forced the truck forward a short distance. The body scraped the flower bed, making a screeching sound, even throwing sparks. The mutant dog immediately gave chase, leaping forward to pounce on the refrigerated truck. If it landed, both the truck, Zhang Hai, and all the supplies would be done for. Just then, gunfire suddenly rang out from behind. Rat-a-tat! Bullets hit the mutant dog, creating several bloody holes. Awooh! The mutant dog howled in pain and turned to look at the off-road vehicle with the mounted light machine gun. The muscular man firing the gun felt his scalp go numb when the monster locked eyes on him. The light machine gun kept firing, but the mutant dog was agile and fast. Plus, the zombies blocked the bullets. The muscular man widened his eyes, watching helplessly as the mutant dog charged toward the vehicle. Seeing the distance between the mutant dog and them growing shorter, the muscular man finally couldn't hold on any longer. While firing desperately, he shouted, "Run! V-room!" The off-road vehicle suddenly swerved, and the light machine gun on the roof also turned, still aiming at the mutant dog, continuing to pour out bullets wildly. Because the turn was so sharp, one of the vehicle's wheels was lifted off the ground. "Yang Qingqing," the muscular man shouted. This mutant dog was too fast, even if they turned now, they wouldn't be able to avoid it. They needed the other off-road vehicle to assist. But in the other vehicle, Yang Qingqing's face was pale. This mutant dog was more terrifying than any monster she had ever seen. Jumping onto it or near it would be too dangerous. Its size was massive, and it was still charging. Even brushing against it might cause serious injury. Also, this mutant dog's reflexes were incredibly fast. Although Yang Qingqing was quite fast herself, she had no confidence in facing it. Those terrifying claws, one hit and your guts would spill. Simply put, she'd be dead, no doubt about it. So, when she heard the muscular man shouting, although the off-road vehicle sped up immediately, Yang Qingqing herself hesitated and struggled. Seeing the mutant dog up ahead, her body felt weak, and she couldn't move. Just then, V-room. The minibus that had been following at the rear suddenly swept past the off-road vehicle, right in front of Yang Qingqing. Jiang Zhuying is going to act, was Yang Qingqing's first thought. Until now, the fights hadn't needed Jiang Zhuying to step in. But now was the moment. If every battle required Jiang Zhuying, then what use were the rest of them? Jiang Zhuying could become the leader not only because of her strength but because, in crucial moments, their survival depended solely on her. Yang Qingqing stared at the passenger seat window where Jiang Zhuying was sitting. Everyone admired her. Yang Qingqing was jealous. That was part of why she looked down on Jiang Lushi. Jiang Zhuying's amazing abilities made Yang Qingqing envious. She thought life was just too unfair. But regardless of her feelings, Yang Qingqing had to admit Jiang Zhuying's strength. The gap was too big, no matter how unwilling she was, she couldn't catch up. Seeing Jiang Zhuying make a move before her gave Yang Qingqing a bitter feeling. She had just hesitated out of fear, and Jiang Zhuying clearly saw it and acted. But to Yang Qingqing's surprise, Jiang Zhuying's window didn't open. Instead, the minibus drove straight toward the mutant dog. What is this? Before anyone could think further, the minibus slammed into the mutant dog with a loud bang. Only then did the survivors realize, this hit was right on time. The off-road vehicle, and the muscular man in it, narrowly escaped disaster. There were already several deep claw marks on the back of their vehicle. But now, that minibus had to be totaled. Next, Jiang Zhuying would probably step in. The muscular man, still wiping cold sweat, said to the driver, "Get ready to go back and get the boss's brother." If Jiang Zhuiying fought the mutant dog, Jiang Lushi, a regular person, might be affected. Now that the minibus was done for, of course, they had to get him out. Jiang Zhuiying would definitely order that. But just then, the minibus shook suddenly. Then it reversed briefly, then accelerated and rammed forward again. But this time, the mutant dog had already leapt to the side, and the minibus missed. What shocked everyone wasn't that it missed, it was that the minibus could still move. That last hit had completely enraged the mutant dog. Its face twisted, it let out low growls, and its target switched from the off-road vehicle to the minibus. The bullets hadn't hurt it much. Only a few had actually penetrated, it was too agile. But that sudden ram from the minibus, fast and forceful, had actually caused it real pain. After missing once, the minibus backed up again, then roared forward once more. Seeing it constantly swerving, adjusting its angle to keep attacking, and all the zombies crushed along the way, the survivors were dumbfounded. This was insane. Not only had the minibus not fallen apart, even its front looked mostly fine. What the survivors didn't know was, during Jiang Liushi's collision with the mutant wild boar earlier, the windshield cracked and the front was badly dented. But that was because the boar specialized in charging, the impact force was terrifying. The mutant dog, however, was agility-based. Its hits weren't its most deadly weapons, its claws and fangs were. Also, before coming to Jinling, Jiang Liushi's base vehicle had absorbed some mutant energy left behind after Brother Yu's death. The energy wasn't enough for a full upgrade, so it was used solely to strengthen the vehicle's armor. The defensive power had improved noticeably. Despite the repeated collisions, the vehicle kept going strong, bang bang, not even slowing down. Its sharp turning, instant acceleration, just like a supercar. The roaring engine echoed loudly. It might be a minibus, but it handled like a sports car. Damn. Inside the vehicle, Jiang Lushi had no time to care about how shocked the others were. This mutant dog was incredibly agile. Only that first unexpected hit had connected. But the off-road vehicle was too close to use the air cannon. Besides, using it in front of everyone would be too shocking. As for ramming and accelerating, those he could use freely. Even though the mutant dog had thick fur and strong defense, repeated impact trauma could still hurt it internally. A few more hits would significantly reduce its fighting strength. He hadn't rammed the off-road vehicle to save it, he had just seized a surprise attack opportunity. The moment the mutant dog appeared, a flash of excitement and anticipation appeared in Jiang Liushi's eyes. Though he was serious about the mutant dog's power, this was a great opportunity, maybe even lucky. He already had one mutant crystal. And in his eyes, this dog was the second one delivered right to him. Of course, killing it wouldn't be easy. Just then, Zhang Hai rushed in with the refrigerated truck. He saw it all and shouted in shock. Holy crap! This is insane. Freaking insane. What kind of RV was this? It was basically an armored vehicle. Inside, Jiang Lushi stayed expressionless, eyes locked on the mutant dog. Every time he turned the steering wheel, the precise direction and angle made Zhang Hai speechless. This driving skill was insane. Of course, Zhang Hai didn't know that Jiang Lushi was basically a rookie driver, he didn't even have a license. The smooth, precise handling came entirely from the starseed's data calculations. Zhang Hai didn't come back just to spectate. On his truck, the ability user climbed out and, seeing a chance, leapt forward. As the mutant dog dodged the minibus, the user struck with his spear. At the same time, the refrigerated truck suddenly accelerated and closed in from behind. The mutant dog noticed the threat behind it and was momentarily distracted. Bang, the minibus crashed into it again, full force. The mutant dog was completely enraged, but Jiang Lushi didn't give it any chance to retaliate. Right after the collision, he immediately retreated to put some distance. If the mutant dog managed to scratch the minibus a few times, it wouldn't end well. This mutant dog had been hit by the minibus twice in a row, and now it hated both the minibus and Jiang Lushi inside it so much that it wanted to tear them apart and devour them instantly. Seeing the minibus backing away, it directly ignored the sneak attack from the Esper on the freezer truck and suddenly leapt, charging toward the minibus. The distance between it and the minibus was already short, and with its speed, it could catch up in a single pounce. The mutant dog opened its huge bloody mouth in a hideous manner, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. It was going to bite the vehicle apart and drag the human inside out. But just then, Jiang Zhuiying appeared at the minibus window. Seeing the mutant dog charge crazily, she swung her iron rod hard. Zap! A few streaks of blue-white electricity flashed across the rod, like lightning, and the current hit the mutant dog accurately. The dog's body was massive. The current wasn't enough to be fatal, but it caused its body to freeze instantly. And in that moment of stiffness, the minibus suddenly accelerated and crashed into it again. The coordination was flawless. As soon as Jiang Zhuing appeared, she showed overwhelming strength. In front of the mutant dog, there was no fear on her pretty face, only calm eyes. That's how she seized the opportunity to attack. Moreover, only her attack managed to truly make the mutant dog pause. If she kept attacking repeatedly, the dog's body wouldn't be able to handle it. The minibus hit just now was solid and much fiercer than the previous ones. Do it! Jiang Zhuing shouted. At that moment, the minibus backed off again and suddenly swerved to the side. Bang bang bang. Gunfire erupted as a barrage of bullets rained down madly on the recently struck mutant dog. The muscular man kept shooting while shouting, "Help out, everyone! Yang Qingqing!" Both Zhang Hai and the muscular man realized it was time to cover Jiang Lushi. The minibus's crash resistance, performance, and Jiang Liushi's driving and reflexes were insanely good. Their earlier fight with the mutant dog made it clear, if they didn't help the minibus now, next time they faced the dog alone, they wouldn't be so lucky. Not necessarily certain death, but definitely a heavy price to pay. So they tacitly agreed to support Jiang Lushi. At this point, Yang Qingqing couldn't stay still anymore. Even if she was scared of the mutant dog, she had to grit her teeth and have the SUV move in. Boom! The minibus seized the moment when the bullets forced the dog to dodge, switched from reverse to a sudden charge forward, and rammed into it again. The muscular man immediately stopped shooting, thinking Jiang Lushi was totally insane, charging in like that through the line of fire. Fortunately, he wasn't hit. But soon, the muscular man noticed that the bullets had hit the minibus. The window now had a spiderweb-like crack. In other words, while the bullets struck, they didn't penetrate the window. The minibus actually had bulletproof glass. The muscular man was completely stunned. This vehicle's modifications were way too powerful. Even the cars of national leaders might not be this well equipped. But if he knew that Jiang Liushi's vehicle had a fuel capacity of 1 ton and carried a powerful area damage weapon like an air cannon, he'd think differently. Arg! The mutant dog wasn't dead yet. This time, the minibus had slammed it straight into a roadside shop, but it quickly charged out again from inside. The minibus's repeated collisions hadn't caused many external injuries, but the dog was now staggering as it stood. After rushing out, it shook its head hard. At that moment, Yang Qingqing approached, but as soon as she landed next to the dog, it let out a furious roar, scaring her into jumping back before she could even act. The mutant dog wasn't roaring at her, it had only one thing in its eyes now, the minibus. Yang Qingqing's face turned pale. Even injured, this mutant dog was still terrifying. Compared to Jiang Zhuing's terrifying power, she didn't even have the chance to strike. Of the other two, one relied on a spear but couldn't even hit, and the other used a gun. Combined, they were still not as effective as Jiang Zhuing. They were okay against ordinary zombies or weaker mutant beasts, but now, they could only play a supporting role. With Jiang Zhuing present and the constant interference from the other 3 vehicles, even though the mutant dog was extremely agile, the minibus still found multiple chances to hit it. No matter how strong it was, it still had flesh and blood. After being repeatedly slammed by the minibus, its movement slowed, wounds appeared on its body, and blood flowed from its nose and mouth. Seeing this, the survivors became excited and began coordinating with Jiang Lushi more fiercely, launching stronger attacks. Earlier, they had been the ones getting beaten by the mutant dog. Now, the situation had reversed. Especially the combo of Jiang Zhuing and Jiang Liushi's minibus, it was absolutely suppressing the mutant dog. Moreover, both of them were completely safe inside the vehicle, making it an obviously secure tactic. Boom boom boom. Jiang Lushi didn't even know how many times he had rammed the dog. This time, he directly slammed it into the outer wall of a building. The massive impact shattered the building's glass, and shards rained down like a storm. After hitting it into the wall, Jiang Lushi wasn't done. He stepped hard on the gas, continuing to press the dog against the wall. If they fired the air cannon now, both the wall and the dog would likely be blasted to bits. Vroom! The minibus engine roared wildly, the tires screeched against the ground, raising a cloud of dust and leaving deep skid marks. Seeing how fierce Jiang Lushi and the minibus were, the survivors were left speechless. Through the gaps, they could still see the massive body of the mutant dog and the blood pouring out from under the vehicle. Finally, the minibus engine noise died down, and it slowly backed away. Is it dead? Everyone stared nervously at the spot where the dog had been. As the minibus backed off, the mutant dog's form came into view. Its massive body was almost crushed out of shape, blood flowing from its eyes, mouth, ears, and nose, its body scorched with electric burns, and some areas were still smoking. Under its body was a huge pool of blood. The sticky blood was also smeared all over the minibus's front, dripping down in big drops. The mutant dog's body was still twitching slightly, but clearly, it was no longer alive. The freezer truck and the SUV stopped nearby. Everyone felt like they had run out of strength. Finally, it was killed. Besides the mutant dog, a few zombies were also killed during the fight, their bodies lying around, crushed into a bloody mess by the several vehicles speeding and turning back and forth. "Holy shit!" Zhang Hai shouted. He looked at the mutant dog, still in disbelief. When it attacked earlier, he thought he was going to die. But now, this fierce and brutal mutant dog had become a stray, defeated one. If this minibus hadn't suddenly unleashed its power, who knows how things would have turned out today. The others also stared blankly at the scene. It wasn't until the minibus came to a stop and slightly jolted as it ran over a zombie corpse that they finally shifted their gaze. The front of the minibus was still intact, with only a bit of damage, which, in their eyes, was as good as none. As for the windshield, there were just some claw scratches and the bullet marks from before. But looking back at the freezer truck, it was a miserable sight. The claw marks on the cargo hold looked like it could split in two at any moment. One side had been rammed by the mutant dog and was dented, the whole thing deformed. It was just a minibus, yet it had been modified to be sturdier and more crash-resistant than their freezer truck, with much better performance. For such a large vehicle, its turning was incredibly agile. Inside, Jiang Lushur simply let out a breath. His expression was calm, not flushed red, nor pale. Recalling his calm performance just now, everyone felt their impression of him had been overturned. When he came along today, they thought Jiang Lushur was just messing around, tagging along for nothing, needing Jiang Zhuiying to protect him. But now, the brutal reality was right in front of them. They were only support, just assisting Jiang Lushur. Although the main combat power was the minibus, driving skill also mattered greatly. The strong smell of blood filled the air. Jiang Zhuiying looked around, zombies were gathering again. "You go stall the zombies. Zhang Hai and Musclehead, come drag the mutant dog into the freezer truck." "Oh," Jiang Zhuiying glanced at Jiang Lushur and continued, "dig out the mutant dog's crystal core while you're at it." Jiang Lushur rammed the mutant dog mainly for this crystal core. In fact, this mutant dog, being an agile type, was exactly the kind Jiang Lushur found troublesome. And at this time, these espers and the convoy came in handy. Of course, in the whole battle, the most important supporting role was still Jiang Zhuiying. Their loot was divided based on contribution, and this time the siblings took the biggest share. Not only had the team already promised Jiang Lushur a mutant crystal core, even by contribution alone, no one would argue if he wanted it. So when Jiang Zhuiying spoke, Zhang Hai and the other man from the freezer truck got to work without saying a word. These two were clearly used to cleaning up the battlefield and collecting loot. They were fast and efficient. Zhang Hai even stuck his finger straight into the mutant dog's heart and dug out a blood-covered mutant crystal core. He ran back to the freezer truck, rinsed it with water, then immediately ran over to the minibus and handed it to Jiang Zhuiying. "This mutant crystal core is really pretty." Jiang Zhuiying looked at it briefly, then handed it to Jiang Lushur. The mutant crystal core was crystal clear, reflecting glass-like light. It was indeed very beautiful. But this kind of thing had just been dug out of the mutant dog's terrifying body. Jiang Lushur took out another mutant crystal core from his pocket. Now, he had two. After dragging away the mutant dog, the convoy shook off the zombie group and stopped again at a relatively safe place ahead. The freezer truck was too damaged, mainly the cargo hold. Though they temporarily blocked it with the mutant dog's body, after some bumping, the large crack reappeared. It had to be repaired first, or else they'd be dropping supplies all the way. As for other dents and damage from the collisions, there was no fixing that for now, they'd just have to make do. But the freezer truck already had metal plates prepared for repairs. Zhang Hai grabbed nails and a hammer and started nailing plates over the crack. Bang bang bang. As the sound of hammering rang out, Jiang Lushur took out both mutant crystal cores. Jiang Zhuiying had gone out for air, and the others were resting. No one was paying attention to him. They all seemed used to Jiang Lushur's habit of staying in the car. With such a powerful minibus, it made sense he treated it like his life. Glancing at the others, Jiang Lushur looked at the crystal cores again and gave a command to the starseed. Click. With a soft sound, a small slot popped out from the dashboard. There were two indents in the slot, enough to hold two mutant crystal cores. Jiang Lushur took a deep breath and placed both cores inside. A perfect fit, no gaps at all. As soon as the crystal cores were placed, the slot automatically closed and retracted. At the same time, the starseed's voice spoke. Two mutant crystal cores inserted. New evolution options for the base vehicle unlocked. Please choose the direction you wish to evolve. Option 1, upgrade fuel tank. Most of the options, Jiang Lushur had seen before. Looking again now, he was still tempted. Storage space, auto-absorption, mechanical arms, weapon upgrades, he wanted them all. But this time, Jiang Lushur already had a clear goal when collecting the 2 crystal cores. He shook his head, forcing himself to ignore all the other options and look directly at his target. Option 10, activate biological lab. By adding materials, you can develop a gene evolution fluid to enhance host genes and greatly improve physical ability. Requires, level 1 mutant crystal core X2. Jiang Lushur's current combat power relied entirely on the base vehicle. He himself was just an ordinary person. If he never had to leave the vehicle, that would be fine, but obviously, that wasn't realistic. Even if he ran over all the zombies alone and drove into a place to collect supplies, he'd still have to be on guard, always extremely cautious. So without hesitation, Jiang Lushur selected that option. First, activate the biological lab. Do you want to activate the biological laboratory? Biological laboratory has been activated. Please add the following materials to complete the construction of the biological laboratory. The starseed listed a long list. Seeing this list, Jiang Lushur was extremely frustrated. When upgrading the fuel tank before, a lot of materials were needed, and Jiang Lushur had long become used to it. Without materials, these facilities would not appear out of thin air. No upgrades could happen without them. But the materials needed for the fuel tank upgrade were relatively common. In this material list, however, some of the items, let alone now, even during peacetime, Jiang Lushur thought were very hard to obtain. Ordinary people wouldn't even know where to start. For example, titanium, 100 kilograms, iridium, 1 kilogram, nickel, 120 kilograms, cobalt, 150 kilograms. These were all extremely difficult to gather. The satellite city was actually just a small camp. The military had set up layers of roadblocks on the road, with rows of dark gun barrels behind them, and tanks lined up, creating a strong sense of pressure. As they approached the barricade, the convoy began to slow down. Jiang Lushur saw many zombie corpses on the road. Some had been there for a while, and no one had cleaned them up. They had been crushed over and over by passing vehicles, pressed flat onto the ground. This place really gives off a chilling feeling. Jiang Lushur looked at the soldiers behind the barricade. They were fully armed, with serious expressions, coldly watching the minibus and the 3 vehicles approach. Anyway, we're just here to exchange supplies. As long as we have something they want, they're easy to talk to. We need each other, it's mutual benefit, Jiang Zhuing said, rolling down the window. She didn't speak or stick her head out. She just stretched out one hand, slender fingers, fair and delicate wrist, exposed in the air. Crack! A spark of electricity jumped between her fingers. Jiang Lushur saw that when the soldiers saw this, they silently moved the barricade aside to let them pass. It seemed that this electric ability had already become Jiang Zhuing's signature. Just seeing it was enough for these people to recognize their convoy. The satellite city was made up of a small street and some roadside residential houses. These places had now been fenced in to form a camp. The convoy slowly drove in. Jiang Lushur saw many ordinary people sitting by the roadside, watching their vehicles pass. Blood was still seeping from the cracks of their freezer truck, and the faces of those people showed a trace of fear. Even though they were in a military camp, they weren't truly far from zombies. Seeing this survivor convoy arriving from outside immediately reminded them of the horrors out there. The military zone had over 1,000 soldiers and a large amount of supplies, requiring a lot of logistical manpower. These ordinary people were under the military's protection, but they weren't idle, they took shifts doing various logistics tasks. The people Jiang Lushur saw now were the ones temporarily off duty, sitting by the roadside and resting. Squads of fully armed soldiers patrolled the camp. When they saw the convoy, they cast wary and scrutinizing looks. The satellite city headquarters is over there. It used to be a school, Jiang Zhuing pointed to a few buildings ahead. The students' dormitories were now the soldiers' living quarters. Classrooms and office buildings had become their storage areas and places to trade with survivors. The convoy stopped on the playground. Jiang Lushur got off the vehicle and saw a bulletin board at the entrance of the teaching building. This board was previously used for school announcements, but now it had many different, strange notices posted on it. List number 71. Collect 100 boxes of aspirin and other anti-inflammatory medicines to exchange for 1 ton of mutant beast meat and 100 bullets, or other needed items of equal value. This list is issued repeatedly and can be completed multiple times. List number 92. 10 boxes each of number 5 and number 7 batteries can be exchanged for 50 kilograms of mutant beast meat, 10 bullets, or other needed items of equal value. This list is issued repeatedly and can be completed multiple times. These are the military's published demand lists. This way survivors can clearly know what the military wants. Otherwise, if they bring things the military doesn't accept, it would be frustrating. These lists change often, and they want all kinds of things. Zhang Hai came up behind Jiang Lushi and explained when he saw he was interested. Usually, what the military gives us in return is mutant beast meat, bullets, and weapons. Bullets are the most expensive, followed by medicine. Look at the quantities they want, it's not easy to gather that much. Oh, Jiang Lushi nodded but didn't leave. Instead, he kept looking at the list. He had come to Satellite City, first because he was worried about Jiang Zhuiying, and second, to see if he could trade for the materials he needed. The materials required to open the biological lab couldn't be gathered by himself or Jiang Zhuiying's small team, it would be much faster through the military. List number 109, 1 mutant crystal core can be exchanged for 1 ton of mutant beast meat or other items of equal value. List number 211, 100 quilts, 100 down jackets. By the way, Zhuiying, can we trade for rare metals in this place? Jiang Lushi asked, not finding what he wanted on the list. The military only wrote other items, besides meat and bullets. What those other items were, they didn't explain. That? The military should have everything, I think. Even if they don't, if we can provide something they want, they can publish a related list to collect those from other survivors, Jiang Zhuiying said. They can do that? That's great then. Jiang Lushi nodded. Zhang Hai looked at Jiang Lushi curiously, not knowing what he wanted rare metals for. But he didn't come over just to ask what Jiang Lushi was thinking. He was extremely interested in Jiang Liushi's minibus. He hadn't had the chance to ask before, but now he couldn't hold it in any longer. Brother Jiang, where did you get that vehicle? It's awesome. The person who modified it is a genius. If there's a chance, I really want to meet them. I'd love to learn from them. I really hope they're still alive, Zhang Hai said. Of course he's still alive, Jiang Lushi silently thought. But as for asking for advice, impossible. If you asked him how it was modified, he wouldn't know either. Zhang Hai kept pestering for a while but had to give up in the end. Meanwhile, Jiang Zhuiying and the others went into the hall to exchange supplies. Being able to trade for the new weapon she had dreamed of, Jiang Zhuiying looked to be in a great mood, as if she couldn't wait. The others were more or less the same. Coming here allowed them to replenish bullets and other items, and also check if there was anything they could exchange for. Besides exchanging supplies, coming to such a crowded place and being able to do something like shopping, as in the old days, helped ease the nerves that were always tense from fighting zombies and relieved the loneliness of living among the undead. Seeing that the survivors and Jiang Zhuiying were all busy with their own things, Jiang Lushi walked over to a table. The hall setup was actually very simple. Besides the 2 original windows, the rest were just tables used as makeshift service desks, each manned by 1 or 2 soldiers. There were still some survivors inside the hall, arguing with the soldiers at one table, likely disputing the exchange rates for supplies. Jiang Lushi slowly walked to a table in the corner and asked, I'm looking for some specific materials. Do you have them? A young soldier sitting behind the table looked up at Jiang Lushi casually and asked, What do you want? Regular visitors were already familiar faces, but this young man, around 20 years old, was clearly a stranger. However, the soldier had seen that Jiang Lushi was with Jiang Zhuiying's group. 100 kilograms of titanium, and Jiang Lushi had just spoken the first word when the soldier froze for a moment. The more he listened, the more surprised he became. Although survivors came to exchange all kinds of items, this was the first time someone wanted to trade for so much metal. Survivors usually wanted supplies essential for survival or weapons. What would they need metals for? The soldier looked at him again and, seeing that Jiang Lushi didn't seem to be joking, revealed a strange expression and said, I'll check for you. Maybe they had a local network here. Anyway, the soldier started searching on the computer in front of him. Jiang Lushi waited patiently. If the military had some in stock, that would be great. If not, then they'd have to issue a list to collect it from other survivors. After a few minutes, the soldier looked up and said to Jiang Lushi, No. None in stock. This kind of material wasn't something survivors would collect to trade, and the military's demand lists had never included them. Then, Jiang Lushi was about to ask about issuing a request list when a voice suddenly interrupted from the side. Iridium? What do you want that for? But that stuff, you can find it at our university. Jiang Lushi turned around in surprise. The speaker was an old man in his 60s, who didn't look like he was one of the survivors here to exchange supplies. He was dressed in dirty clothes, with mud on his hands, looking just like an honest old farmer. Your university? Jiang Lushi quickly asked. These metals, most of them were just hard to find, not particularly rare. But iridium was the hardest to get and also the scarcest. Iridium is usually used for fountain pen tips, and how big is a fountain pen tip? A whole kilogram of iridium was already quite a lot. I'm talking about 1 full kilogram of iridium, Jiang Lushi added. If the old man told him to go pull pen tips from fountain pens at school, Jiang Lushi would be speechless. The old man wore glasses. Hearing the slight skepticism in Jiang Lushi's tone, he said, 1 kilogram? There is. Our university's lab has several iridium crucibles. Iridium crucibles are used for chemical experiments and usually found only in top national laboratories at major universities. This wasn't Jiang Lushi's field of expertise, so he hadn't thought of that. Now, hearing the old man, it suddenly all made sense. You mean Jinling University? If it was Jinling University, it was right next to where Jiang Zhuing's group lived, not far at all. Yes, the old man nodded. Thank you. Jiang Lushi was overjoyed. That meant he could collect the hardest to find material himself. Sir, could you tell me where the lab is? Jiang Lushi asked. Jinling University was huge, and even Jiang Zhuing might not know where the lab was exactly. The old man moved his lips, then wiped his hands on his clothes and asked, Got pen and paper? I'll draw you a simple map. That would be great. Jiang Lushi quickly borrowed pen and paper from the soldier. The soldier hesitated at first, but after glancing at Jiang Zhuing nearby, he reluctantly handed it over. Seeing the old man's dirty hands holding his pen, the soldier immediately showed a look of disgust. I'll draw it for you, the old man spoke slowly, giving the impression that he wasn't all there. His hands also trembled a little, but as he began drawing, Jiang Lushi was surprised. This simple map was drawn very neatly, smooth lines, very precise. The old man drew carefully. It took him 3 to 4 minutes to finish the route map and hand it to Jiang Lushi. Here. This road here, it's the closest way in. Got it. Jiang Lushi took the map and thanked him. Thank you. By the way, sir, what did you do at Jinling University? Taught there, the old man replied. Professor. Professor? Jiang Lushi was stunned. A professor should be looked after by the military, right? But judging from this old man, he was already very old and probably couldn't do much else, so they had him farming instead. He likely wasn't doing well either, which is why he was wandering around during break time. And judging from the obvious disdain on the soldier's face, this useless old man wasn't respected at all. Astronomy, the old man added. That explained it. Jiang Lushi understood. If he had been a professor of physics, chemistry, or engineering, he would have been valued. But astronomy was considered useless in the apocalypse. Everyone only cared about survival. Who had time to worry about the stars? This old professor really was unlucky. You be careful going there, okay? Sigh, still trying to mess with this kind of stuff at a time like this, the old man wiped the pen on a relatively clean spot on his clothes, put it back on the table, and turned to leave. Wait, sir, Jiang Lushi called out. The old man turned back in confusion. Jiang Lushi looked at him, he seemed barely able to walk. At this rate, who knew how long he could survive? Jiang Lushi thought for a moment, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a bag to hand to the old man. Here, take this. It was a bag of dried mutant beast meat. Jiang Zhuing had given it to him earlier. It was a hefty portion, much more than what Yang Qingqing and the others were carrying. But for Jiang Lushi, who had just acquired another mutant dog, this dried meat wasn't much. Originally, the soldier had lost interest in the conversation between Jiang Lushi and the old man and was flipping through a book. But with a casual glance, he saw Jiang Lushi pulling out a bag of mutant beast meat like it was nothing, and giving it to the old man. The old man looked down at the meat. A flicker of desire clearly flashed in his eyes, and he swallowed instinctively. In this camp, unless you were special talent, food was distributed based on labor. An old man like him, seen as useless, got very little and not very good food. He hadn't eaten meat in a long time. At this point, the soldier couldn't help but speak. This brother, giving such mutant beast meat to an old man like him is a waste. Better to let him eat his fill. If you want to use this mutant beast meat to exchange for more regular food, we can do that here, the soldier said. In fact, the military didn't deal with such small trades, this was the soldier's own idea. Although he wasn't an esper, with this mutant beast meat in hand, he could trade it with survivors for some good stuff, like a few packs of cigarettes. The military had large stockpiles of supplies, but they had little to do with individual soldiers. These soldiers relied on their salaries to get by, and the supplies issued to them monthly were limited. So, earning a little on the side was naturally a good thing. Originally, he thought his suggestion was pretty good, but Jiang Lushi simply smiled and said, "It's fine. I also have ordinary food, and some of it is close to expiration. It'd be a shame not to eat it, there's not even room left in the fridge. Sir, follow me out later, I'll give you some." Jiang Lushi's whole vehicle was stuffed with food, even the roof was packed full. Hearing this, the soldier had nothing to say. Judging by Jiang Liusher's tone, he clearly had plenty of supplies. He didn't care about this bit of meat at all. If even the fridge couldn't hold it, how much food must he have? Mutant beast meat? The old professor was shocked after hearing the soldier's words. So this whole bag of dried meat was actually mutant beast meat? He had thought it was just beef jerky. He had seen mutant beast meat before, but this was the first time it was in his own hands. That meat was what espers ate. In the military, it was solid hard currency. Mutant beast meat and bullets, these two things were like gold in the apocalypse. The professor usually ate rough food. If he could eat even a bit of meat, it was a blessing. Eat mutant beast meat? He didn't even dare to think about it. Looking at the meat Jiang Liusher took out, the professor, though he really wanted to eat it, didn't reach out for it. Instead, he waved his hand strongly and said, "I can't take it, I can't take it. This is too valuable. I can't accept it without having done anything. Just take it, it's not a big deal. Besides, I'd like to ask you something else," Jiang Liusher said. The professor still didn't take it and asked, "What is it?" "I'm just an old man, I might not be able to help you." "Sir, do you know where in Jinling I might find these metals?" Jiang Liusher listed out the other metals he needed. He was just trying his luck. The professor was a local and knowledgeable, maybe he would know something. The professor had actually heard Jiang Liusher listing those metals to the soldier earlier, but at that time, he hadn't immediately thought of where to find them. Now that Jiang Liusher asked, he furrowed his brow and began to recall carefully. They definitely aren't at the school. Let me think where they might be. I'm old, and my memory's not great, the professor mumbled to himself. He thought for quite a while, muttering several place names to himself and then shaking his head. Suddenly, his cloudy eyes lit up and he said, got it. Didn't they build a new industrial park a few years ago? There's a company there, Jiangnan Special Metal Technology Company. Their headquarters and warehouse are over there. The warehouse of the Special Metals Company. This company specialized in those materials. Their warehouse probably had the ones Jiang Liusher needed, maybe even more. Though iridium was rare, it was unlikely they had that. The many materials needed to build the biological lab couldn't be obtained from the military, but now, this old professor had pointed Jiang Liusher in the right direction. I haven't been to that industrial park, so I can't draw you a map, the professor said regretfully. No problem, I can find it myself, Jiang Liusher replied happily. Now he didn't need to publish a request list and wait, having a direction was all that mattered. He handed the bag of mutant beast meat directly to the professor. The professor quickly caught the bag with both hands. He still wanted to decline, but the rich aroma of the meat wafted out from the bag, making his stomach growl twice uncontrollably. This made the professor feel embarrassed. He looked at Jiang Liusher with gratitude and repeatedly said, "Thank you. Thank you so much. But please, no more, really." The professor wandered around the camp every day. Sometimes he gave survivors a bit of advice, but most people just saw him as an old man. The nice ones smiled and chatted casually without really listening. The rude ones just impatiently told him to get lost. He spent his days farming and was so stifled that he found this way to pass the time. He had never expected that after helping someone, he would actually receive something in return. This pleasant surprise filled him with gratitude toward Jiang Liusher. As for Jiang Liusher, getting clues to iridium and other metals was worth far more than this bit of food. But since the professor was adamant, Jiang Liusher didn't insist. If the old man rationed the mutant meat carefully, it would provide a good amount of nutrition, at least it would stop him from looking like he was already at death's door. At that moment, Jiang Zhuying's voice suddenly called out, "Bro, what are you doing? Come over and take a look." "Coming," Jiang Liusher replied, turning his head. At one of the tables, Jiang Zhuiying and her team had gathered together. Even another group of survivors in the hall had gone over curiously to watch. They were probably trading for weapons. When Jiang Liusher was around, Jiang Zhuiying always liked to ask for his opinion, that had become a habit. Actually, she knew best which weapon suited her. And since she had wanted this weapon for so long, she had definitely analyzed it in many ways and confirmed it was right for her. But with Jiang Liusher present, she couldn't help but ask him first. So the crowd automatically made way, all turning to look at Jiang Liusher as he walked over. The other group of survivors and the soldier who had spoken to him earlier all looked at him with curiosity. Especially the soldier, he had thought Jiang Liusher was just a new member of Jiang Zhuiying's team. But it turned out he was her older brother? As for the survivors, they were surprised that Jiang Liusher was just an ordinary person, yet Jiang Zhuiying and even her subordinates cooperated with him so willingly? Previously, Yang Qingqing and the others had looked down on Jiang Liusher. But in today's fight, they were the weak ones. Now, of course, they stepped aside consciously, and had far fewer complaints about him. "Bro, look. In Jiang Zhuiying's hands was a long katana. The blade alone was about 1.5 meters long. The katana had originally been used by Qi Jiguang. This one had been custom-made for Jiang Zhuiying by the military. She had paid a deposit, and now finally gathered enough mutant beast meat to complete the purchase. This katana was very different from ordinary ones. Jiang Lushur took the knife and immediately felt that the material was unusual. Cold light gleamed from it, very tough, and different from the knives he'd seen before. The blade was covered with streak-like patterns. The hilt, connected to the blade, was threaded and made from the same material. At the top was a rhombus-shaped metal ring. The blade and handle together were almost as tall as Jiang Zhuiying, about 1.7 meters long. This was forged from special alloy steel, heat-resistant, and most importantly, highly conductive. The soldier sitting behind the desk took the initiative to explain to Jiang Lushur. Highly conductive. Jiang Lushur nodded. This knife was indeed tailor-made for Jiang Zhuiying. This knife, while called a katana, was more accurately a miaodao, based on the Japanese katana that Qi Jiguang modified from the Tang sword, and then further changed into something more suitable for combat. It was called a miaodao because of its long, slender blade, resembling rice seedlings. This long knife, specifically designed for military combat, was sharp and swift, a true killing weapon. With a blade like this, plus electricity, it was definitely formidable. At this moment, the soldier also brought out an alloy steel case and heavily placed it on the table. Just from the sound, you could tell it was heavy. When the case was opened, it gleamed coldly inside. He took out a long chain from it. When stretched out, it was 4 or 5 meters long, with a movable clasp at one end. This can connect to the ring at the top of the hilt. This chain is also made of special alloy steel and has excellent conductivity. The entire knife set is very expensive. It was rushed through production overnight, dozens of workers were involved. You won't find this kind of material anywhere else. Such a knife didn't exist before the apocalypse. Pre-apocalypse weapons didn't need to pair with powers, but this knife was made based on Jiang Zhuiying's combat style and her ability. This special alloy steel had excellent conductivity. In a world where resources and manpower were scarce, producing this kind of metal and forging such a complex long knife meant the cost was naturally sky-high. Seeing Jiang Zhuiying's eyes sparkle while staring at the long knife, Jiang Lushur could tell she was more than satisfied. Custom-made, with special alloy steel, this knife was definitely worth it. Buy it, Jiang Lushur made the final decision. The soldier immediately said, the price was agreed on earlier, just need to add 5 more tons of mutant beast meat. Did you bring it? 5 tons? The surrounding survivors all looked shocked when they heard that number. So much mutant beast meat, just to buy one knife? If it were food, how many people could that feed? We brought it, probably even more than enough, Jiang Lushur said. In fact, that complete mutant dog alone already exceeded the amount needed. What Jiang Lushur meant by more than enough referred to the meat he had given to Jiang Zhuiying earlier, plus what her team had stored. They didn't have a large scale to weigh it, only a rough estimate. But handing it to the military couldn't be estimated, weights had to be precise, down to the gram, for fairness on both sides. When the military called for someone to follow Jiang Zhuiying's group to retrieve the meat, the survivors curiously stood by the door to watch. The freezer truck was beat up, looking like it was about to fall apart. No one knew what they had gone through on the road. The 2 off-road vehicles parked nearby looked normal, but the minibus, with so many woven sacks stacked on the roof, stood out. Its plain appearance didn't match the rugged look of the 2 SUVs. When Zhang Hai opened the back door of the freezer truck, a hideous, terrifying mutant dog's head drooped out. The sudden drop of the mutant dog's head startled even the soldiers, who instinctively reached for their guns. The survivors also had a jolt before realizing, who could possibly transport a live mutant beast? No one had the strength to do that. Still, the dog was so terrifying that even in death, it made people feel afraid at first glance. Looking closer, blood was still seeping from its eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. It hadn't fully clotted. This was killed on the road just recently? The freezer truck's claw marks, though patched, were still visible. The metal plates used for repair were brand new, clearly just added. Those claw marks had to be made by the mutant dog. For it to tear apart a heavily reinforced freezer truck like that, how did they even manage to kill it? As the survivors were thinking this, Zhang Hai had already climbed into the truck. Boom! A dull thud rang out, a big chunk of mutant beast meat was thrown out and landed heavily on the ground. Before the survivors could react, boom 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 boom, more and more large chunks of mutant meat were tossed from the truck. At first, the people didn't react much, but as the meat piled higher and higher, and with the clearly whole mutant dog's head still hanging out of the truck, lightly swinging, the survivors started to feel unsettled. This is too much. When they saw the mutant dog's head, they had assumed it was part of the 5-ton meat, probably the majority. The soldiers had thought the same. That would have been the logical assumption. But as more meat was thrown out, the survivors slowly realized they might have been wrong. These meat chunks were probably the real payment for the knife, and the mutant dog was just something they picked up along the way. Soon, the meat chunks formed a small mountain on the ground. Jiang Zhuing said, "This is it. You can weigh it now." The military's large scale was brought over. A few soldiers worked quickly and efficiently. Soon, they had weighed out 5 tons. Everyone watched as several chunks remained untouched. 5 tons was enough, these were extra. So when Jiang Lusher said, "more than enough," he hadn't meant the mutant dog, he had meant the meat alone was already extra. "All right, the meat's complete. The knife is yours," said the soldier, registering the meat. He glanced at the mutant dog and asked, "What are you planning to trade this meat for?" Yang Qingqing and the others didn't say anything. Their share of the battle was small, they weren't in a position to answer. They all looked at Jiang Zhuing, who then looked at Jiang Lusher. "This mutant dog was mostly taken down by my brother. Whether to sell it or not, you'll have to ask him," Jiang Zhuing said. Everyone's gaze instantly shifted to Jiang Lusher again. Soon, some survivors and even a soldier's expression changed, completely dumbfounded. "He killed it? Isn't he just a normal person?" Those who noticed were all espers. They could sense that Jiang Lusher had no energy fluctuation at all. He was just an ordinary person. An ordinary person killed a mutant dog? "Don't mess with us, we might be inexperienced, but we're not that gullible." Although the soldier asking the question wasn't an esper, he was also surprised after hearing what Jiang Zhuing said. He had interacted with Jiang Zhuing's survivor team several times before and knew that the strongest person in the team was Jiang Zhuing. Judging by the amount of supplies she brought every time, and the fact that it was always the same group going back and forth, it was clear that even among all the espers in Jinling they dealt with, Jiang Zhuing's team was considered top tier. Otherwise, for most survivor teams, not just the members, even the leader might change each time. The supplies they brought also varied greatly, depending on luck. But Jiang Zhuing's team was consistently stable. Of course, this time, they had outdone themselves. The soldier was surprised. Was this man also very strong? Especially since he was the one who killed the beast. Could he be even stronger than Jiang Zhuing? Jiang Lusher could tell from the soldier's expression that he had misunderstood. He didn't care much about that kind of misunderstanding, but he also wouldn't bother to explain anything. "This meat won't be sold for now," Jiang Lusher said, then looked at Jiang Zhuing and Yang Qingqing's group and added, "If you want to sell your share, go ahead." "Huh? No, it's fine, we don't need to." The muscular man and the others looked at each other and quickly shook their heads. Yang Qingqing also said, "I don't need it either." She bit her lip and looked at Jiang Lusher. Jiang Lusher's calm tone felt different from Jiang Zhuing's firm, commanding style at first, but in fact, it was the same type of authority. To Yang Qingqing, she was used to being directed by Jiang Zhuing. But now it suddenly felt like Jiang Lusher was the one making decisions. In this matter, Jiang Lusher had indeed done the most. But in other teams, even if someone contributed more, the leader would still make the final arrangements. Yet in their team, not only for this situation, even things unrelated to Jiang Lusher, they still asked for his opinion. Yang Qingqing actually wanted to trade for something, but seeing that everyone else said no, she didn't want to cause trouble. After all, her share of the meat was probably the smallest. And this frustration of not getting to trade, she blamed on Jiang Lusher. "He's not even in our team, acting like he's in charge," Yang Qingqing thought silently, annoyed. "Not trading, huh?" The soldier looked at the mutant dog's corpse and showed a regretful expression. Usually, survivor teams didn't bring much mutant beast meat, unless they needed a lot of bullets or were making a major trade like Jiang Zhuing. Only then would they bring enough. Survivor teams capable of killing mutant beasts had espers, and mutant beast meat was very valuable to them. A complete mutant dog like this was extremely valuable. If they could get it, today's military gain would be huge. "What a pity. Then come back when you want to trade," the soldier said. Just like Jiang Zhuing had said before, these soldiers were still polite to them. The purpose of the military base was to collect supplies, and doing that by relying only on their own team wouldn't be as fast as trading with survivors. There was no need to offend each other. "Oh right," Jiang Lusher suddenly asked, "can I ask what the current situation is?" Previously, the starseed had told him that after the apocalypse broke out, the entire world would rapidly collapse. But as for the specific situation, the starseed didn't explain. The military, backed by the state, had preserved many important technologies before the apocalypse. They should have a better grasp of the situation. Those safe zones and islands must still be connected somehow. But that was just Jiang Liusher's guess. He wanted exact information. The current situation, the soldier hesitated. They usually avoided talking about the situation with survivors, to prevent causing more despair, but that was for ordinary people. These survivors were already struggling in the city and likely had long given up hope for improvement. I can't say too much. Anyway, the safe zones are researching the mutant beasts. These damn things are getting stronger, and faster too, the soldier said. Evolution, both mutant beasts and espers were evolving. Even though the soldier didn't say much, his implication was clear. The military definitely had no plans to counterattack for now. Just holding the safe zones was enough. For survivors, it meant they had two choices: go to the safe zone, or survive on their own. Ordinary people might want to go to the safe zone. But espers? They needed to eat mutant beast meat to evolve. On the other hand, there were already so many people in this camp. The military hadn't sent them to the safe zones. It seemed they didn't want to take in more people either. It's getting late, let's go, Jiang Lushur said after checking the time. Once night fell, the whole city would belong to the monsters. They were even more active at night than during the day. Traveling at night was basically suicide. On the way back, Jiang Lushur told Jiang Zhuiying the information he had gotten from the old professor about the metal materials. Jiang Zhuiying had been excitedly admiring her newly acquired long blade. But when she heard Jiang Lushur asking about the national lab at the university, she was stunned, then looked up and said, "Brother, what do you need those for?" "They're useful," Jiang Lushur said. "So, do you know the situation at Jinling University?" "Well, there aren't really any supplies at the school, and second, there are too many zombies. So we haven't gone back. But I do know the general situation, it's full of zombies," Jiang Zhuiying said. "Too many students and staff, there must be zombies everywhere on campus. Are you planning to go there?" "I'll go with you," Jiang Zhuiying said. "We'll see," Jiang Lushur replied. "That special metals company is said to be in Jinling Industrial Park. Have you heard of it?" Jiang Zhuiying went to university in Jinling, but usually, she was either on campus or out on field research with her professors and team. She hadn't really explored the city. She rested her head on her hand and thought for a moment, then pouted, "Nope. Let's ask Yang Qingqing later. She's a native of Jinling, she must know." "Okay," Jiang Lushur nodded. If he could get a clear location, that would be perfect. On the map, he could only find Jinling Industrial Park, but nothing more specific. The place looked messy, he hadn't seen any sign of that special metals company. Jiang Lushur had downloaded the latest version of the map, but it still didn't include that place. He couldn't help but feel frustrated and speechless. The return trip was much smoother by comparison, but by the time they got back to the villa camp, the sun was already setting, and the sky was getting dark. It gave people a feeling of relief, like they had just made it back in time. The survivors who had stayed behind at the villa were all anxiously waiting by the door. Although Jiang Zhuiying's group only made up a small part of their team, they were their entire combat force. If anything had happened to Jiang Zhuiying and the others, the rest truly wouldn't know what to do. When they saw the convoy appear in the distance, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. But why was Jiang Liushur's minibus at the front? Wasn't the sturdier freezer truck always the lead vehicle? When the vehicle stopped at the gate, and they saw the condition of the freezer truck, everyone gasped. The freezer truck was in terrible shape. No wonder it wasn't leading. Jiang Zhuiying and the others got out one after another, and several survivors quickly and automatically surrounded them. Refueling, maintenance, cleaning, and unloading supplies were usually done by these non-combat personnel. Only repairs and modifications were Zhang Hai's job. Those tasks weren't something ordinary people could handle. "There's a mutant beast in the truck. Go and drag it out to be dealt with." Cutting, removing organs, all of that was troublesome and also done by non-combat members. In Jiang Zhuiying's team, there were no freeloaders. Yang Qingqing and the others had originally thought Jiang Lushur was an exception, a useless outsider. But after today, none of them thought that anymore. Although the moment Jiang Lushur returned to the camp, he really did look like someone who had nothing to do with anything. "I'm heading back to the garage," Jiang Lushur said to Jiang Zhuiying, then prepared to go. "Big bro, I'll come help you fix the car later," Zhang Hai said. Jiang Lushur waved his hand. "No need." Zhang Hai was fine with regular vehicles, but the base vehicle wasn't within his expertise. Letting him work on it might actually increase Jiang Liushur's repair costs? According to the Starseed's report, Jiang Lushur didn't need to rush repairs anyway. The current damage didn't affect performance, just made the vehicle look a bit rough. As for appearance, it really had nothing to do with his vehicle in the first place. As the minibus returned to the garage and the garage door closed, the other survivors felt a bit awkward. With Jiang Zhuiying around, they couldn't say anything, but they were thinking, did that vehicle even need repairs? It didn't look badly damaged. It seemed to have been very well protected. At that moment, several survivors had opened the freezer truck's cargo hold. Whoa! Even though they were mentally prepared and knew what was inside, seeing it with their own eyes still made them instinctively step back. This mutant dog was truly terrifying. As ordinary people, they couldn't even imagine fighting a creature like this. The freezer truck ended up like this because of this monster, right? That battle, TSK, must have been intense. But you guys are impressive. As fierce as this thing was, it's lying here dead now, isn't it? As he spoke, one of the survivors even reached out and patted the dog's head. As an ordinary person, just being able to stand here and touch the dog's head gave him a strange thrill. Even seeing a few zombies used to scare him half to death, but this mutant dog's corpse couldn't hurt him anymore. Soon, it would be chopped up into pieces of meat. He knew this was all thanks to Jiang Zhuing's group, so he complimented them just the right amount. Who doesn't like hearing praise? The other survivors also chimed in. It wasn't just flattery, they were genuinely shocked and amazed. Yang Qingqing didn't look very pleased. Before the others could finish, she said, "I'm tired. I'll go rest." Then she turned and went back to the villa without looking back. She really didn't like hearing all that. The muscular man and the others looked a bit embarrassed. One of the espers coughed and said, "Ahem, actually, this mutant dog was mainly taken down by Zhuing's brother." Huh? The survivors were all stunned. But then, seeing Jiang Zhuing's reaction, they quickly understood and started talking all at once. So strong? Ha, runs in the family. Both are amazing. Man, the gap between people is just insane. Even as they said this, their expressions were full of shock. Looking at the mutant dog, they found it hard to believe. They had already learned from Yang Qingqing and the other espers that Jiang Lushi was just a regular person, just like them. But someone like them had managed to kill a mutant dog that shocked them just by looking at its corpse? "It's just the vehicle that's good," Yang Qingqing muttered softly when she heard all the cheers and admiration from afar. Inside the base vehicle's cabin, it was bright and warm. The luxurious interior glowed under the lights, making it feel even more refined. Compared to the terrifying, bloody scenes outside during the day, this place felt unbelievably safe, comfortable, and peaceful. Click. The bathroom door opened. Jiang Lushi stepped out after taking a hot shower, steam still rising from his body. Every pore felt relaxed. He lay down on the bed and felt completely at ease. Jinling University, Jiang Lushi stared at the ceiling. Today, he had obtained 2 mutant crystal cores, and the construction of the biological lab had already started. The excitement kept him awake. He had witnessed those espers in action today. The guy from before, UGE, was too weak, no evolution at all. But his speed still left some impression on Jiang Lushi. And today's battles, especially Jiang Zhuing's power, had shocked him even more. Opening the biological lab wasn't just because Jiang Lushi wanted to improve his own strength for safety, it was also because he was deeply fascinated by these special mutant abilities. Ordinary people who gained powers weren't ordinary anymore. "Tomorrow morning, I'm heading to Jinling University." Jiang Lushi made up his mind. Just then, Jiang Zhuing's drawn-out voice came from outside the garage. "Brother, dinner time." Hearing that voice, Jiang Lushi smiled. Even in the apocalypse, at this moment, he felt like nothing had really changed. When Jiang Lushi came into the hall, the survivors were all eating. He noticed that as soon as he appeared, everyone was looking at him, with smiles on their faces and a hint of amazement in their eyes, as if they were looking at something unbelievable. These survivors already knew that the mutant dog was mainly killed by Jiang Lushi ramming it. All of them had seen the corpse of that mutant dog. The more shocking the corpse looked, the more surprised their expressions were when they looked at Jiang Lushi. Jiang Lushi glanced at them, then walked through the hall and entered the dining room. Being stared at like that made him a bit uncomfortable. Inside the dining room, everyone was already sitting at the dining table, and the food had been served, but no one was eating. But it wasn't because of Jiang Lushi that no one was eating, it was because Jiang Zhuing hadn't moved. She was waiting for Jiang Lushi, so the others could only wait too. "You've waited long enough, go ahead and eat." Jiang Lushi sat down, glanced at them, and said. After he spoke, Jiang Zhuing obediently picked up her chopsticks, and the others followed and began eating. "Brother, eat more." Jiang Zhuing didn't eat much at first. Instead, she served a pile of dishes into Jiang Liushi's bowl until it was almost overflowing. "You eat, too." Last time they ate together, Jiang Lushi had noticed that espers ate a lot. 2 or 3 plates per person was no problem. Judging by how unsatisfied they looked after eating, they could probably eat even more, but they held back to save resources. But that applied to people like Yang Qingqing. Their share of mutant beast meat was small, so they had to control themselves. As for Jiang Zhuiying, her share was actually quite large, she just wanted to save up and trade for weapons. Now that she had her weapon, and with a whole mutant dog still there, she was eating freely. She made up for everything she hadn't eaten before. The more mutant meat one ate, the faster the evolution. As for Jiang Lusher, he didn't care about saving. He had a lot of supply now, so he could eat however he liked. Even though improving physical strength with mutant meat was a long-term process, since it was both useful and delicious, why not eat more? Gurgle. Yang Qingqing looked at the siblings eating meat so happily, and she felt her own stomach shrinking. I'm full. Yang Qingqing put down her chopsticks, silently crying in her heart. At that moment, Jiang Zhuiying suddenly asked between bites, brother, didn't you say you wanted to go to Jinling University? Earlier when she asked, Jiang Lusher said, we'll see, but she had remembered it clearly. When it came to anything related to Jiang Lusher, Jiang Zhuiying cared deeply. The most vivid memories she had were of Jiang Liusher's care and love for her, as well as his complaints. Even though Jiang Zhuiying never mentioned these things, she always showed it through her actions. Jiang Lusher originally intended to tell her after the meal, but he didn't expect her to bring it up at the table. When, are you going? Jiang Zhuiying forced herself to swallow the meat in her mouth, then asked, going? Is it urgent? The sooner the better. I've decided to go tomorrow, Jiang Lusher said. Okay. Jiang Zhuiying grabbed another piece of meat, then rolled her big eyes and looked at the others at the table. Then we'll go to Jinling University tomorrow. Rest well tonight. Huh? Everyone was stunned. Go to Jinling University? If it was Jiang Zhuiying who wanted to go, they wouldn't question it. She was the leader, she could go wherever she wanted, as long as it wasn't sending them to their deaths. The reason they had a foothold and were surviving was mostly thanks to her, this was why she had authority. But from the conversation they just heard, it was clearly Jiang Lusher who wanted to go to Jinling University. What are we going there for? Yang Qingqing asked. She looked at Jiang Lusher in confusion. He wasn't from their university, and now Jinling University was full of zombies. She couldn't understand at all why Jiang Lusher wanted to go there. There's something I need from the lab there. It's very useful to me, Jiang Lusher said. As for the matter with the base vehicle, he couldn't explain, so he had to be vague. The lab? What useful thing could be there now? Isn't it all just chemistry stuff? Yang Qingqing was speechless. First, he wanted mutant crystal cores, and now lab equipment? Did he want to study the virus himself? This was just daydreaming, nonsense. Even if you wanted to find something like that, you didn't need to go to a university lab. You could find some elsewhere, maybe someday later? Before Yang Qingqing could finish, Jiang Zhuiying interrupted her. All right, that's enough. Is this kind of thing even up for discussion? Jiang Zhuiying said. She didn't care what her brother wanted or what it was for. Since Jiang Lusher said he needed it, they'd go get it. She knew Jiang Lusher well, he wouldn't go through all this trouble for something useless. If he said it was useful, then it definitely was. And as the leader, making this kind of decision was her basic right. Usually, whenever they needed to go somewhere or do something, it was always Jiang Zhuiying who made the call. Just going to fetch an item, definitely not something worth debating. Being shut down like that, Yang Qingqing's expression turned ugly. They were around the same age, from the same school, but Jiang Zhuiying was the one in charge. And her personality was like that, seemingly easygoing, but actually very firm and not giving face to anyone. Yang Qingqing now felt humiliated. All the other espers and survivors in the hall seemed to be watching her joke. But Jiang Zhuiying didn't care what she thought. After finishing her last bite of meat and wiping her mouth, she stood up contentedly and said, I still owe my brother one mutant crystal core. The one from that dog we killed today should go to my brother based on contribution, so that means we still owe him one more. After saying that, Jiang Zhuiying grabbed Jiang Lusher and walked off. Looks like Yang Qingqing didn't want to go. I guess the others don't want to either. Jiang Lusher asked. Jiang Zhuiying smirked and said, so what if they don't? I'll go alone. And if I go alone, why should I keep them around? If they don't come, then when I return, they won't have a place here anymore. These espers didn't have what it took to make it on their own. Jiang Lusher was amused by her words and rubbed her head. Not bad, kid. By the way, where's your storage room? Jiang Lusher asked. Watching Jiang Lusher and Jiang Zhuiying walk away, Yang Qingqing withdrew her gaze with an unpleasant expression. She said angrily in a low voice, that guy is such a troublemaker. Don't you all feel like, ever since he showed up, Zhuiying sides with him in everything? That Jiang Lusher, when it comes down to it, isn't it just that his vehicle is strong? Yang Qingqing continued. Seeing Zhang Hai and the others staying silent, Yang Qingqing stood up angrily and left. These people are all cowards. Jiang Lusher was inside the storage room checking things out. He was someone who cared a lot about supplies. He knew he would get the biggest share of the mutant dog today, but he still wanted to see exactly how much he had and what it looked like stored. This was important property. The survivors were very efficient in handling the mutant beast meat, and their cutting skills were good. The meat chunks were neatly placed, looking clean and even appetizing. Jiang Lushur was very satisfied. This mutant dog was not much smaller than the mutant wild boar, and the portion he received was quite substantial, almost 3/4 of the entire dog. The remaining 1/4 mostly went to Jiang Zhuing. Jiang Lushur was happily admiring the meat when he suddenly heard voices coming from outside the door. "It's quieter here, just say it here," a woman said. "It's still about that bumpkin." Another voice sounded familiar to Jiang Lushur. Wasn't that Yang Qingqing? At first, Jiang Lushur wasn't paying attention to their conversation, but then he heard his own name. That Jiang Lushur, and Jiang Zhuing too, they're really too much. Yang Qingqing said angrily. Jiang Lushur quietly moved to the door and looked out through the peephole. He saw Yang Qingqing and another woman. He vaguely recognized her. When he first met Jiang Zhuing, this woman was there too. She was an ordinary person but had good physical ability, didn't talk much, and didn't look easy to get along with. She had been sticking close to Yang Qingqing at the time. It seemed their relationship was quite close. Jiang Zhuing said we're going with her tomorrow to Jinling University to accompany her brother. Huh? Why? The other woman asked. Who knows? Yang Qingqing said angrily. It's not like I'm unwilling to move together, but he's not even part of our team. Look at him, aside from eating, he stays in that vehicle all day, treating it like some treasure. No one else is allowed near it. Even when we go out, only Jiang Zhuing gets to ride in his vehicle. The more she talked, the more irritated Yang Qingqing felt. She had been publicly shut down by Jiang Zhuing and now couldn't even avoid going tomorrow. From the start, she had disliked Jiang Lushur. But Yang Qingqing also knew that her initial dislike for Jiang Lushur came mostly from her dissatisfaction with Jiang Zhuing. When this strong, independent Jiang Zhuing suddenly had a normal, older brother, she was secretly gloating. But soon, that older brother surprised everyone. At first, under Yang Qingqing's influence, the survivors were quietly mocking Jiang Lushur, watching him like a joke, even feeling sympathetic toward Jiang Zhuing. But now, their attitude had changed. Even the other Esper started calling him Big Bro like Zhang Hai did. He's not even part of their team, why call him Big Bro? It was all just sucking up to Jiang Zhuing. Every single one of them only cared about Jiang Zhuing. At that point, Yang Qingqing suddenly had an idea. That vehicle of Jiang Lushur's really was something. If she could get her hands on it. But thinking more about it, she realized it wouldn't work. Her driving skills were terrible. Even if it were a tank, she wouldn't be able to use it. What's the use of something you can't even operate? But just because she couldn't get it didn't mean there weren't other ways. If he wants our help, he should treat himself as one of us. That vehicle should be treated as a team resource. We should elect a driver to operate it. Even if he still drives, it should be used publicly. Yang Qingqing thought, if she could stay in that minibus, it would definitely be safer than riding in a regular off-road vehicle. After today's fight with the mutant dog, she felt deeply unsafe. And the minibus had left a very strong impression on her with its defense capabilities. By comparison, off-road vehicles were less secure than even the freezer truck. How could she feel at ease riding in one of those? That's true, but he definitely won't agree, right? The woman said. With how stingy he is. Of course he won't. But I don't believe I'm the only one who thinks this. I'll go talk to everyone, get them to bring it up. Jiang Zhuing can't ignore everyone's opinion, right? If she disagrees, everyone will definitely be disappointed in her. Yang Qingqing said, with a sneer forming at the corner of her mouth. Judging from how protective she was of her brother, Jiang Zhuing might really refuse, and if she did, she would face even more pressure. In the end, maybe she'd lose everyone's trust and still have to give up the vehicle. This plan was viable. Alright, I'm going to bed. Tomorrow, I'll talk to the other Espers first. It's for everyone's safety and benefit, they won't disagree. And besides, what if Jiang Lushur gets bitten by zombies? He's just a normal person, after all. Yang Qingqing smiled meaningfully. The other woman was briefly stunned, then also smiled. Yeah, that last part was probably the real point. After speaking, Yang Qingqing left, and so did the other woman. After they walked away, a door not far from them opened. Jiang Lushur walked out, looking thoughtfully in the direction where Yang Qingqing had left. That Yang Qingqing had assumed he was already back in his room, but today, he happened to be inspecting the storage room. After all, he had a large share of meat stored there, and as someone who took resources seriously, of course he wanted to verify how much he really had. Yang Qingqing, Jiang Lushur rubbed his chin. He really hadn't expected this woman to try stirring up trouble. In his mind, she had barely existed. The villa area at night was far from peaceful. From time to time, zombie howls echoed from the distance. These sounds rose and fell, not like random screeches, but with a chilling, eerie undertone. Even though they knew that as long as they didn't make loud noises or shine bright lights at night, zombies wouldn't approach, and that someone was always on watch, many survivors still couldn't sleep well. But this was just the reality of surviving in the apocalypse. They were already among the lucky ones. Lying in bed, Jiang Lushur also heard the zombie howls. He paused briefly, then continued watching his show. As he watched, Jiang Lushur couldn't help but wonder, could these shows be used to trade for supplies in the future? Whether with the military or other survivors. All it would take is collecting a few USB drives to copy them again and again. The next day, Jiang Lushur got up early. Although he hadn't gone to bed very early, he had slept quite well. Sleeping in the base vehicle certainly felt much safer than wherever the survivors were. Morning. Good morning, big bro. During breakfast, Jiang Lushur glanced at Yang Qingqing. She also looked at him and smiled, nodding as a greeting. Jiang Lushur smiled back slightly, his expression warmer than usual. Yang Qingqing paused for a second, not understanding why Jiang Lushur suddenly seemed so friendly. But she didn't think too much of it. Today, she would speak with the other espers and bring up the matter. Let's see if Jiang Lushur could still smile by then. Jiang Lushur just smiled at Yang Qingqing and ignored her. He had already clearly heard what was on her mind yesterday. This is today's route map. While eating breakfast, Jiang Lushur took out the map and placed it on the dining table. That simple map had already been compared with the one downloaded on the tablet. The old professor had marked key buildings along the road in great detail, and the comparison showed almost no mistakes. This route is relatively safer, with fewer zombies. But honestly, in any area full of zombies, there's no such thing as truly safe, Jiang Lushur said. Just like how they suddenly encountered a mutated beast yesterday. The freezer truck was repaired overnight. It can run normally today, Zhang Hai said. That muscular man also said, the machine gun has been checked, and the bullets are ready. That's good. Anyway, everyone be careful today. It's best if we can go and come back safely, Jiang Zhuing stood up and said. She was holding a long knife, wearing denim shorts and a simple tight t-shirt, with her hair in a ponytail, a perfect combination of youthful energy and terrifying cold weaponry. Seeing Jiang Zhuing today, Jiang Liushur's eyes lit up. Maybe because of her evolution, she now had a more unique aura. Let's go! Jiang Zhuing's words were very brief. Sitting in the minibus, her expression looked eager to fight. She had just received a new weapon and hadn't tested its power yet, today was a good chance. But as they approached Jinling University, Jiang Zhuing began to feel a bit melancholy. Back before the apocalypse, I had already left school. I don't know what the situation was like in the school when the disaster broke out. Jiang Zhuing felt lucky about this. She didn't have to face classmates who had turned into zombies when the apocalypse started. Many survivors in the camp had seen their loved ones turn into zombies or be torn apart by them. Now, entering the campus again, Jiang Zhuing felt much calmer. Even if she encountered familiar classmates or teachers turned into zombies, she felt she could face them calmly. Jiang Lushur glanced at her and said, the school is so big, it must have been chaotic back then. Even if you were there, you couldn't have done anything. Yeah, I know. Jiang Zhuing nodded. She knew she couldn't have saved anyone back then. This kind of thought just flashed through her mind. As the convoy approached Jinling University, the number of zombies ahead began to increase rapidly. The freezer truck led the way, and the superpowered people in the two off-road vehicles began to take action. The roars and crashing sounds of zombies were non-stop. These zombies didn't fear getting hurt. They crazily pounced forward one after another. Soon, the convoy reached the gate of Jinling University. A group of zombies made up of students and a few security guards blocked the gate. The barrier pole at the entrance tilted crookedly, swaying and creaking. The gate was stained with patches of blood, and the four big characters of Jinling University were splashed with dark brown blood. A half-eaten corpse, reduced to bones, lay across the top. Hearing the sound of the convoy, the zombies all looked over. Seeing those former classmates, Jiang Zhuing let out a soft breath and waved to an off-road vehicle next to the minibus, clear the way. Boom! The freezer truck directly rammed the barrier pole aside and charged into the zombie group. After nearly getting split in half by a mutant dog yesterday, Zhang Hai had reinforced the freezer truck further. He welded steel spikes, half a finger long, onto it. This length wouldn't cause zombies to get stuck on the vehicle when hit, but it could inflict more damage on zombies or mutant beasts. Although zombies don't care about injuries, the smell of blood might attract others. These zombies had no sense, they attacked when they saw humans and also when they smelled blood, no matter the time. So this function helped a bit. However, compared to Jiang Liusher's minibus that rammed freely and didn't fear attacks, the freezer truck still looked weak. Zhang Hai, driving today, felt no excitement and remained silent the whole time. Jinling University's national-level laboratory was in a secluded area near the center right of the campus. The old professor had drawn a route through quieter paths, but even so, zombies were still everywhere. These former students, now zombies, were all agile and fierce. As they were hit and attacked, the freezer truck once again became dented and battered. The convoy slowed down and entered a small square in front of the national lab. The lab was surrounded by green belts, and the convoy stopped in front of the building. Beep beep. This time, Jiang Liusher honked the horn himself. After a few honks, he backed the car up a bit. Soon, several zombies suddenly rushed out of the main entrance and charged straight at the minibus. Boom! A few seconds later, another group of zombies appeared and were also knocked down by the minibus. After repeating this a few times, Jiang Liusher finally stopped the car. Roar! As soon as Jiang Zhuiying got off the car, a group of zombies, attracted by the noise, rushed in from outside the gate. She turned around, stretched her long knife to the side, and stood still. The zombies were running fast. In a blink, they were close, waving their arms and baring red mouths, eager to tear Jiang Zhuiying apart. Compared to these 20 or so zombie-like monsters, Jiang Zhuiying looked very fragile. But just as they were about to reach her, Jiang Zhuiying suddenly moved. Her body turned slightly, and the long knife slashed across with her motion, creating a bright white arc. Sparks of electricity danced on the blade, forming what looked like a net in front of her. Crack crackle. All the zombies froze instantly. Their bodies twitched, black smoke rose from them, and then they thumped to the ground, muscles still spasming. Jiang Zhuiying retracted the long knife to her side. The electric arcs still flickered, making her look like a character from a movie special effect scene. Especially when she turned around, her eyes seemed to flash with electricity too. "Let's go," Jiang Zhuiying said, smiling. She was very satisfied with the knife's performance. The other superpowered people also got off the vehicle. Yang Qingqing looked at Jiang Zhuiying, feeling very uneasy. Jiang Zhuiying had become stronger. She just killed over 20 zombies easily. That was something Yang Qingqing could never do. Most of the zombies in the lab building had already been lured out. Even if some were still inside, it wouldn't be a big problem. They could knock on the door before entering to check. So Jiang Liusher didn't plan to go in. Jiang Zhuiying would take the team inside to find the iridium crucible and bring it out. The old professor had marked its location on the map. Just as they were about to enter, Jiang Liusher suddenly said, "One of you should stay here." The survivors looked at each other. Jiang Zhuiying was about to volunteer when Yang Qingqing's eyes turned, and she said, "Then I'll stay." "You?" Jiang Zhuiying hesitated for a moment. Earlier, when Jiang Liusher suggested that someone stay behind, she immediately said she would stay, thinking it would be safer to be with her brother. After all, even though Jiang Liusher had the base vehicle, he himself was still an ordinary person. But now, with Yang Qingqing volunteering to stay, Jiang Zhuiying was suddenly stunned. Why did her brother want someone to stay behind? These days, Jiang Zhuiying had developed some understanding of Jiang Liusher's base vehicle. It was relatively easier to protect oneself in a zombie horde. It didn't make sense if he wanted someone to stay just to protect him. It would make more sense if Jiang Liusher was the one protecting Yang Qingqing. "Brother, why do you want someone to stay?" Jiang Zhuiying walked over and asked. "Nothing much. Just for communication. My vehicle can't enter the lab and has to wait outside. In case anything happens outside, I need someone to pass on the message. I'm not strong enough, so it's more convenient to have someone help with communication." Jiang Liusher casually said this, and it made sense. Jiang Zhuiying thought for a moment, then worriedly reminded him, "All right, brother. Be careful. Make sure you don't get out of the car." "Don't worry." Jiang Liusher agreed immediately. Jiang Zhuiying had relied on her brother since childhood. She trusted him completely. No matter what crisis it was, he always had a way to handle it. "Then I'm heading to the lab." As Jiang Zhuiying spoke, she swung her long knife, the chain rattling with a metallic clatter, and the blade gleamed coldly. The iridium crucible was on the top floor of the lab building, in the National Key Laboratory. That lab alone occupied the entire floor, filled with advanced equipment and instruments, each worth millions. It was the pride of Jinling University, and every time officials came to inspect, they would visit this lab. Jiang Zhuiying was relatively familiar with the lab building. Though many zombies were inside, and some had been drawn out, they would still encounter zombies in the lab. To go to the top floor and retrieve a few iridium crucibles, they needed Jiang Zhuiying. Zhang Hai and another superpowered person, Sun Kuan, didn't have much combat power. Zhang Hai was a mechanic, with strength only in his hands. As for Sun Quan, to put it bluntly, he was like a gecko, his feet could stick to walls, allowing him to walk smoothly. But if they really ran into a zombie horde, both would be helpless. Big brother, we're heading out now. Be careful. Zhang Hai carelessly reminded Jiang Lushi, grabbed a bag of mutant beast meat in one hand, and carried a light machine gun with the other as he went upstairs. But in Jinling University's campus, especially without the freezer truck, the light machine gun should be used as little as possible. Once a shot was fired, it could attract a large group of zombies. That might be drinking poison to quench thirst. Jiang Lushi nodded and watched the three of them disappear into the lab building. A trace of cold light flashed in his eyes. The lab building was tall, 12 floors. With the power out since the apocalypse, there were no elevators. They had to climb all the way up, and there were many zombies along the way. They would face intense battles. Using superpowers consumed a lot of energy. Superpowered individuals couldn't defy the law of conservation of energy. Their energy didn't come from nowhere. It had to be replenished, and the source was mutant beast meat. Because of intense fighting, they would probably stop a few times to eat and recover. So, to go up and down the lab building once, it would definitely take at least an hour. In other words, Jiang Lushi and Yang Qingqing would have an hour alone together. Yang Qingqing naturally knew this. She was calculating in her mind, occasionally glancing at her wristwatch and counting the time. About 10 minutes later, the sun emerged from behind the clouds, shining down and making the minibus glow golden. The afternoon sun in Jinling was still quite fierce. Yang Qingqing looked at the wandering zombies not far away, estimating the chance of an attack near the lab building. Nearby, there was a dormitory building, not far at all. Dormitories were absolutely packed with zombies, even more so than the lab. A single gunshot could draw in a huge group. Even though she was a speed-type superpowered person, if she got caught in a sea of zombies, she would definitely die. Of course, if she had Jiang Liushi's base vehicle. Yang Qingqing knew Jiang Liushi's vehicle stored a lot of food, including plenty of mutant beast meat. So hot. Yang Qingqing casually walked to the front windshield of Jiang Liushi's car, raised a hand to block the sun, and said in a coquettish voice. Her voice was soft and ticklish. This sun is really strong. I'm sweating. Yang Qingqing took off her jacket, accidentally revealing the figure under her tight-fitting clothes. Yang Qingqing had a good figure. Although not stunning enough to be the campus belle, she was above average. Back in university, many people pursued her. She enjoyed being the center of attention. Even though she secretly looked down on many of the nerds chasing her, she kept a flirtatious distance so she could get them to fix her computer or carry her luggage. To Yang Qingqing, Jiang Lushi was exactly that kind of nerd. She was well aware of Jiang Zhuing's family background, slightly below average. And even after the apocalypse, Jiang Lushi was still an ordinary guy, just relying on a modified car he somehow found. Yang Qingqing believed that someone with that nerdy nature definitely couldn't resist her charms. Brother Jiang, Xiaoying, and the others probably won't be back for a while. Can I get on your car and take a shower? I'm all sweaty and uncomfortable. Yang Qingqing spoke sweetly. Jiang Lushi silently watched her flirt, sneering inwardly. In the apocalypse, morals were dead. For food, for gain, to become stronger, people would do anything. Selling bodies, murder, robbery, none of it was unusual. No electricity in the car. You can't shower. Jiang Lushi casually refused. He wasn't in a hurry and just watched Yang Qingqing perform. He definitely wouldn't let her on the vehicle. If Jiang Zhuing were here, he wouldn't care about Yang Qingqing and the others, because Jiang Zhuing's strength was greater than the other three combined. But with Jiang Zhuing gone, Jiang Lushi wouldn't even open the door. Actually, superpowered people like Yang Qingqing were barely stronger than regular folks. Jiang Lushi still had a Type 54 pistol, but even so, he wouldn't risk his life. No electricity is fine, I can use cold water. If it's too cold, brother Jiang, you can help warm me up, right? Yang Qingqing said with a half-joking tone and threw a flirty glance. No cold water either, Jiang Lushi flatly refused. Yang Qingqing's charming smile instantly froze. No cold water either? It was already the apocalypse. Laws no longer worked, morality had collapsed, and people lived on the edge every day. Who knew how many had already indulged their desires? But this Jiang Lushi, she had clearly seduced him, yet he completely ignored her? Did he not get it? Yang Qingqing was furious. She had already planned everything. Once she got in the car, she would take it from Jiang Lushi. This car was bulletproof and had terrifying ramming power. If it became hers, it would greatly increase her chances of survival in the apocalypse. Although Yang Qingqing was a superpowered person, her abilities were very weak. Her only strengths were jumping power and agility far beyond normal people. In actual combat, forget about fighting mutant beasts, even regular zombies, she could handle only 5 or 6 at once. If there were more, she'd have to run. But her ability to escape was indeed excellent. Taking Jiang Liusher's vehicle and making it her own, what about Jiang Liusher? A loser who just happened to pick up a modified car by luck. The fact that he had survived until now was already a miracle. Becoming food for zombies would be his rightful end. If Jiang Liusher died, no one could prove she stole the car. Of course, dealing with Jiang Zhuiying would still be difficult. That little girl was deeply attached to her brother. Yang Qingqing worried that even if she made something up, Jiang Zhuiying might blame her anyway. So Yang Qingqing decided to go all the way, just take Jiang Liusher's car and run. There was a lot of food in the car, and plenty of mutant beast meat, enough for her to live comfortably for a while. Yang Qingqing's strength was limited, but with this car and her modest abilities, survival in the apocalypse would no longer be a problem. If it didn't work out, she could always join another group. But now, Jiang Liusher refused to open the door no matter what. This made her extremely angry and ashamed. Jiang Liusher, are you stupid or just pretending? I made myself very clear, why are you still acting like you don't understand? It's already the end of the world. We might die tomorrow. If you don't let loose now, are you even a man? Do you have a problem down there? Yang Qingqing placed one hand on the door and instinctively tried to pull it open. She didn't know what mechanism the modified minibus door used. Did it require manual locking? Just now, when Jiang Zhuiying got out, she had thought of trying to open it, just to see if it would work. The result, the door didn't budge at all. Seeing this, Jiang Liusher's expression turned completely cold. A trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Yang Qingqing's action of pulling the door was clearly an attempt to commit murder and robbery. In the apocalypse, killing someone for a vehicle was completely normal. Survivors at the bottom of society had even killed for a piece of bread. A woman who looked seductive might be the most ruthless and poisonous. Jiang Liusher let out a sneer and mocked, even if I wanted to indulge, I wouldn't choose a two-faced snake like you. You want my car? Fine, bring your life. As he spoke, Jiang Liusher quietly pressed the charge button for the air cannon. Hearing this, Yang Qingqing's expression changed dramatically. Her hand on the door froze. She forced a smile and said, Brother Jiang, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Jiang Liusher looked at her with contempt and said coldly, when I suggested leaving someone behind for communication, I already knew you'd volunteer. And you didn't disappoint me. For my car, you acted well. But seeing how you were just now, I don't think you even deserve to be called a woman. You're just a beast in a human skin. You want to seduce me? Sorry, in my eyes, sleeping with a zombie would be less disgusting than with you. Jiang Liusher's words were vicious. When they fell into Yang Qingqing's ears, it felt like she was electrocuted. Sleeping with her was more disgusting than with a zombie? Yang Qingqing was a girl full of jealousy. She disliked Jiang Zhuiying before mostly out of jealousy. Now being mocked like this by Jiang Liusher, her killing intent instantly surged. Who do you think you are? Back in peacetime, you were just a loser. Now, in the apocalypse, you're weaker than a woman. You don't even dare to open the door. You're trash. If it weren't for your dumb luck picking up a broken-down car and having a sister to cover for you, you'd be no better than dogs hit on the roadside. I wouldn't even bother looking at you. Go take a piss and look at yourself. You think you're worthy of sleeping with me? The thought makes me sick. No more pretending. Yang Qingqing knew that after Jiang Liusher exposed her intentions, she could no longer stay with this team. With how protective Jiang Zhuiying was, she'd believe whatever her brother said. There would be no place for Yang Qingqing here anymore. She had to leave, whether or not she got the car. But now that she had decided to leave, all the anger she had bottled up in the team, her jealousy and resentment toward Jiang Zhuiying, her hatred for Jiang Liusher, exploded all at once. Yang Qingqing was unwilling to just walk away. She reached into her pants pocket and pulled out a round black object, a grenade. Although superpowered people were stronger than regular ones, in the early stages of evolution, their powers were still not as deadly as hot weapons. Many superpowered people exchanged for hot weapons. Grenades, being one-time items, had huge power but were cheaper than light machine guns. Yang Qingqing had exchanged for one. She planned to throw the grenade at the windshield. Yang Qingqing didn't believe that glass could withstand an explosion. The only issue was she needed to create enough distance to avoid being hurt herself. When the time came, Jiang Liusher would be blown to pieces. The only concern was whether the car would be damaged too. If the car wasn't wrecked, she could climb in through the broken windshield and drive away. That would be much safer than wandering alone in the apocalypse. With the grenade in hand, Yang Qingqing activated her top speed and quickly created distance from the base vehicle. Yang Qingqing's power was agility, and the base vehicle was a huge, clumsy target. It had no chance of dodging a grenade. Seeing the grenade, Jiang Lushi calmly released the air cannon's charge button. At that moment, the air cannon was only half charged. It wasn't as powerful as when it had killed the mutant boar, but it was still enough to kill Yang Qingqing. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded, the shockwave blasted through the air. A visible shockwave mixed with mist roared toward Yang Qingqing, and at that moment, her grenade hadn't even been activated. The air cannon's speed was too fast. When Yang Qingqing saw that shockwave that looked like it was tearing space apart, she had no time to react. Ah! Yang Qingqing let out a miserable scream. It felt like a massive hammer had smashed her chest. Her entire body flew out like straw. The base vehicle's shot shattered all of Yang Qingqing's ribs. Her left and right lungs ruptured too. Her body, like a lump of minced flesh, was thrown over 10 meters and slammed to the ground. Clatter. The grenade in Yang Qingqing's hand also fell, rolling away. Her face was covered in blood, and her eyes were filled with unwillingness, confusion, and disbelief. She hadn't even realized what hit her just now. That terrifying shockwave, did it come from that vehicle? After being hit by the not fully charged air cannon, Yang Qingqing had not yet died. Her body was paralyzed on the ground, and she struggled to lift her head to look at the minibus, with bloody foam constantly coming out of her mouth. Am I going to die? Yang Qingqing couldn't believe it. Whether it was trying to steal the car or kill Jiang Lushi, Yang Qingqing never saw it as a big deal. Even after Jiang Lushi exposed her and she realized she couldn't get the car, she was just frustrated. But she had never thought that trying to go after Jiang Lushi and his minibus would cost her life. Yang Qingqing didn't want to die. She was a superpowered person, young and beautiful, different from a loser like Jiang Lushi. How could she die? Just then, she suddenly heard a sound behind her. Yang Qingqing's face immediately showed a terrified expression. She knew that sound, it was the footsteps of zombies. That familiar, ha-ha, sound was getting closer and closer. Because of the air cannon's noise and the blood on her body, zombies from far away had been attracted. Her desperate eyes turned to Jiang Lushi inside the car, but Jiang Lushi just looked at her expressionlessly. Finally, Yang Qingqing felt a hand suddenly grab her. Her eyes instantly turned to despair. Watching Yang Qingqing being swallowed by the zombies, Jiang Lushi's expression did not change. For someone who dared to covet his minibus and even tried to kill him, this was the fate she deserved. The explosion from the air cannon also reached upstairs. When Jiang Zhuiying heard it, she immediately cleared out the zombies in the nearest lab, then ran to the window and looked down. She immediately saw the mess downstairs, more than 10 zombie corpses lying around, but the minibus was still parked there. At this moment, the skylight of the minibus opened, and Jiang Lushi stretched out his hand and made an "okay" gesture. Jiang Zhuiying immediately let out a breath of relief. What happened to the boss? Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan quickly came over to ask. Jiang Zhuiying said, "It's fine. Probably more zombies were attracted again, but it's settled now. Let's quickly go to the lab and get the stuff." They were already close to the top floor, but once they reached the lab, they found the door tightly shut. Normally, Zhang Hai could easily pry open regular locks with just his fingers. But this door was extremely sturdy. The National Lab security door was not easy to open. It was not only theft-proof but also explosion-proof and bulletproof. Even superpowered people would be helpless facing such a door. "I'll do it." Sun Kuan stretched his body, cracked his fingers, and said. He returned to the lab they had cleared earlier, used pliers to cut through the protective net outside the window, and crawled out through the window. With no protective gear or tools, Sun Kuan directly grabbed the wall above the window with both hands, pushed off the window ledge with both feet, and began to climb, scritch, upward. His hands and feet were like suction cups, firmly gripping the surface, no different from a gecko. On his back, he carried a light machine gun. Once he reached the lab's window, he hung there using just his feet, cut the protective net with pliers, and fired a shot into the air. Roar! Soon, the zombies attracted by the gunfire all crowded toward the window. But Sun Kuan was still a bit away, and though the zombies were trying to reach him through the window, they couldn't. 2 of them even fell out and hit the ground heavily. Sun Kuan chuckled, aimed his gun at the zombies, and pulled the trigger. After just a dozen shots, no more zombies appeared. The academicians and professors who worked in the National Lab had probably been evacuated before the apocalypse broke out. Whether they lived or died afterward was unknown. Those who remained either became zombies or became zombie food. Sun Kuan climbed into the window, and not long after, opened the door from inside. Jiang Lushi had also heard the gunfire from above. He looked up and saw Sun Kuan entering the National Lab through the window. About 20 minutes later, Jiang Zhuiying and the others came down carrying a big, fully packed bag. As soon as they exited the building, they were stunned. Earlier, from upstairs, the distance was too great, they could only see shadows and couldn't tell anything specific. But now, up close, they noticed something was wrong. Among the zombie corpses, there was a large pool of blood. And Yang Qingqing was nowhere to be seen. Sun Kuan's eyes were sharp, he immediately spotted what remained of Yang Qingqing's body in the pool of blood. In fact, only her clothes were still recognizable. The body was already incomplete. This situation was clear, Yang Qingqing had been eaten by zombies. But with her ability to escape, how could she have been caught and eaten? Jiang Zhuiying quickly looked toward the base vehicle. Thankfully, Jiang Lusher was fine. If anything had happened, he wouldn't have signaled earlier. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan exchanged a glance, both showing puzzled expressions as they looked at Jiang Lusher. Brother Jiang, what happened here? Before Zhang Hai could finish, Jiang Lusher replied from inside the car, Yang Qingqing tried to kill me and steal the vehicle. She even pulled out a grenade and wanted to blow me and the car up. At that moment, the zombies came. Her focus was on trying to hurt me, so she didn't notice. She got ambushed. I was inside the car, so of course I didn't save her. After that, I ran over those zombies. This really happened. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were stunned. Sun Kuan scanned the area and suddenly fixed his eyes on something, then ran over and picked up a grenade that had rolled into the roadside greenery. This really is Yang Qingqing's grenade. Sun Kuan handed the grenade to Jiang Zhuiying. Jiang Zhuiying took it, her gaze turning cold. Trying to kill and steal the car, such a person deserves to die. We're a team. If we want to work together, we can't covet others' things, and even less can we plot against each other. The apocalypse hasn't even been going on that long. Just a week ago, she was still a student. But now she's already this vicious. That shows she's naturally evil. We can't keep someone like her around. As for Jiang Liusher's claim that Yang Qingqing had bad intentions, neither Sun Kuan nor Zhang Hai had any doubts. Yang Qingqing's dissatisfaction with Jiang Liusher had been clear at the dinner table yesterday. And since Jiang Liusher wouldn't get out of the car, the grenade could only have come from Yang Qingqing. As for whether Jiang Liusher saved her or ran her over, none of that mattered anymore. But as Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai looked at Jiang Liusher's calm expression inside the car, they suddenly saw him in a new light. Though Jiang Liusher was just an ordinary man, he was someone not to be messed with. Yang Qingqing provoked him, and without using Jiang Zhuiying's strength, he dealt with her himself, and she died miserably. What exactly happened in between, only Jiang Liusher knew. Get in, Jiang Liusher said with a slight smile. The iridium was in hand. Jinling Industrial Park is about an hour's drive from Jinling University, but that was before the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, even if you specifically choose more remote roads, you still have to face constant zombie attacks. It took about an hour and a half before the convoy finally reached Jinling Industrial Park. From the outside, the Jinling Industrial Park looked desolate. Nothing could be seen moving on the main road, just a few vehicles parked alone on the street. As they slowly drove along the Industrial Park Road, Jiang Lusher was looking for roadside signs. The name of that special metals company should appear on one of the signs. Why don't I see any zombies? Jiang Zhuiying looked around. Zombies always gave people a scalp-numbing feeling when seen, but now this place was so quiet that it felt strange. There were so many businesses and factories in the industrial park. Normally, there shouldn't be a lack of zombies, but now they hadn't seen even one. The factories by the roadside were all deathly silent, and not a single person could be seen in the guardhouses. Maybe someone's already been here, or some noise lured the zombies away, Jiang Zhuiying guessed. Let's be more careful, Jiang Lusher said. At this time, the sun was at its peak, shining brightly, but this empty area gave off a chilling feeling. Found it. Sun Kuan reversed the off-road vehicle back and rolled down the window. That special metals company is in Zone C. We're currently in Zone A. Did you check the route? Jiang Lusher asked. Checked. Then let's go, Jiang Lusher continued. The freezer truck and the off-road vehicle led the way, and the minibus followed behind. Hey! Since there were no zombies, the off-road vehicle drove up beside the freezer truck. Sun Kuan lowered his voice and asked Zhang Hai, why do you think Brother Jiang is collecting all these weird things? Actually, Jiang Lusher was much younger than him, he only called him Brother Jiang out of respect for Jiang Zhuiying. But after what happened with Yang Qingqing today, Sun Kuan felt Jiang Liusher's image had become quite different. When they first came here, they only knew they were helping Jiang Lusher look for something. They didn't expect it would be to search labs for strange items. Someone really wanted those things? And Jinling University was just one of the places. After seeing there was still time, Jiang Lushur suggested going to the Special Metals Company next. Judging by the name, it was clear he was looking for some kind of metal. Why was Jiang Lushur looking for these metals? No idea. Zhang Hai didn't care much about these things and didn't like to think too much. In the apocalypse, staying alive was already good enough. Sun Quan was speechless. Sure enough, there was no point talking to Zhang Hai. But not knowing what Jiang Lushur wanted the metals for, and being unable to ask directly, there was nothing he could do but drop it. The vehicles continued forward. They didn't encounter any zombie hordes along the way. Occasionally, 1 or 2 zombies appeared, but they posed no threat to the convoy. About 10 minutes later, the convoy arrived at the gate of the Special Metals Company. The company's retractable gate was half open, and looking inside, it was empty. The guardhouse was a mess, and in the middle of the driveway, some blood had dried and solidified on the ground. Let's go in. The metals at the Special Metals Company were definitely stored in the warehouse, and it wasn't hard to find one. They drove around the company area and soon found a large warehouse at the rear side. Seeing the size of the warehouse, Jiang Lushur was delighted. With a warehouse this big, there should be plenty of metal. He could definitely gather all the metals he needed. Everything had gone smoothly so far. No zombies were found in the warehouse either. The large door was probably left open in a rush when people evacuated, otherwise opening it would have been a hassle. Jiang Lushur directly drove the vehicle into the warehouse. Then Zhang Hai and Sun Quan followed the checklist, found the needed metals, and loaded them onto the vehicle. These metals were spread throughout the warehouse. Just finding and moving them would have taken Jiang Lushur a lot of time if he were alone. But with these 2 survivors helping, it became much easier. Having these survivors around greatly improved Jiang Lushur's efficiency in gathering materials. After all, Jiang Lushur was just an ordinary person. Driving the base vehicle and ramming through was easy, but in many places, the vehicle couldn't go, like the National Key Lab at Jinling University. Once inside a building, his weaknesses became obvious. 2 or 3 zombies could take his life. Zombies, after mutating from human form, were all incredibly fast and strong, truly capable of tearing a person apart with bare hands. Their only flaw was lacking intelligence and not being able to think. These survivors had really been a big help. In one day, they had already collected 2 mutant crystal cores, and now, they had found all the metals needed to build a biological lab. 100 kilograms of titanium, 120 kilograms of nickel, 150 kilograms of cobalt. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were continuously loading metal blocks onto the vehicle. Watching the metal blocks gradually pile up on the floor of the vehicle, Jiang Lushur felt very pleased. Once the materials were all gathered, he could start building the biological lab tonight. He didn't know what kind of surprises this lab might bring him, but in any case, it would help him break his current deadlock. Jiang Lushur stood on the vehicle and looked at the warehouse of the Special Metals Company. This warehouse had stockpiled a lot of metal. Except for some rare ones like iridium, most metals could be found here. Jiang Lushur had already marked this place on the map. When it came time to upgrade again and more metals were needed, he could return here instead of searching all over. Just as Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were still carrying metals, a sudden roar came from outside the gate. Someone's coming. Jiang Zhuiying immediately turned and looked toward the gate, eyes full of alertness. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan quickly put down the metal blocks in their hands, grabbed their weapons, and looked toward the entrance. Since entering the industrial park, they hadn't encountered a single person. Now, with the sudden sound of a vehicle, everyone became instantly tense. With a screech, a sharp braking sound rang out. Jiang Lushur, Zhang Hai, and the others saw a heavily modified Humvee charge straight to the entrance, then stop. Right behind the Humvee, several off-road vehicles and 7 or 8 motorcycles appeared. So many vehicles instantly blocked the entrance completely. Seeing these vehicles, Jiang Lushur frowned slightly. Almost all of them were equipped with various modified weapons, with long spikes on the front. The people on board wore steel helmets they had welded themselves, exposing only their mouths and eyes. Their eyes were fixed on Jiang Lushur's group, like wild dogs eyeing prey. Just from the appearance, this group gave off a feeling that they were not to be messed with. As soon as Jiang Zhuiying and the others saw them, their expressions darkened. It's Blood Wolf and his gang. Blood Wolf? Jiang Lushur asked. Yeah, their leader calls himself Blood Wolf. No one knows his real name. Anyway, everyone who follows him is crazy, Sun Quan replied. Zhang Hai added, we saw them once at the satellite city. I heard their team has an extremely high elimination rate, even the leader has changed. Normally, survivors don't stay out every day, but they are out constantly hunting mutant beasts and scavenging for supplies to trade with the military for mutant beast meat. That means a high death rate, but their superpowered members get stronger fast. Even the ordinary people in the team, if they survive long enough, can exchange for more gear. At this stage, the strength gap between superpowered people and ordinary people wasn't so large that it couldn't be crossed. Fully armed ordinary people could still fight superpowered ones. Jiang Lushi looked at this group. Even from far away, he could smell the blood coming from them and their vehicles. Jiang Zhuiying and the others clearly didn't have a good impression of Blood Wolf's gang, and they didn't seem easy to deal with. Blocking Jiang Zhuiying's group from the outside, it was clear they didn't come with good intentions. There used to be 3 superpowered people in their team, but one died. Now there are 2 left. The one who just got out of the Humvee is one of them. Brother Jiang, look, the one who got out from the driver's seat, that's Blood Wolf, or the new Blood Wolf, anyway. The original one is already dead, Zhang Hai whispered to Jiang Lushi. 4 people got out of the Humvee. 2 of them were the superpowered ones Zhang Hai mentioned. One was a woman wearing a leather jacket and leather pants. She had shoulder-length wavy hair, sunglasses, leather boots, and held a shotgun in her hand. A leather belt around her waist was loaded with bullets and a long dagger. She looked extremely wild. The other looked very ordinary, about 20 years old, wearing simple casual clothes, with headphones hanging around his neck and non-prescription glasses. If Zhang Hai hadn't pointed him out, no one would have guessed he was Blood Wolf. His appearance and style blended into a crowd. Blood Wolf is very strong, no weaker than our leader. That woman's not weak either. If we fight, Sun Quan and I will probably drag you down, not to mention, they have so many people, Zhang Hai said uneasily. Jiang Lushi listened silently. It seemed that if it came to a fight, they were at a disadvantage. Blood Wolf had his hands in his pockets, took 2 steps forward, and smiled at Jiang Zhuiying's group. Well, what a rare guest. You are Jiang Zhuiying, right? I've heard of you before, back at Satellite City. Blood Wolf's tone sounded gentle, like he was just saying hello on the street. But this setup clearly wasn't a friendly greeting. What do you want? Jiang Zhuiying wasn't fooled by the polite face and asked directly. Jiang Zhuiying, you're asking the wrong question. I should be asking you that. You came to our place and started moving things without saying a word. What are you trying to do? Blood Wolf's smile vanished as he spoke flatly. So this place was Blood Wolf's territory. Seeing that these people had come prepared, Jiang Lushi figured they must have been watching them for a while and waited until they entered the warehouse of the Special Metals Company before blocking the entrance. Zhang Hai and the others looked grim. Their knowledge of Blood Wolf's team was only second-hand. They had no idea where their camp was located. Turns out this industrial park was their turf. What bad luck. These metals stored here aren't yours either. Judging by your attitude, you seem to think you own everything here? Even if the metals are in your territory, you can't even use them, Jiang Zhuiying said. Whether we can use them or not, that's our business. But if you want to take them, you should talk with us first, right? The woman in leather giggled. What do you want? Jiang Zhuiying asked directly. These people kept beating around the bush with smug expressions. It was really irritating. They weren't in a hurry to fight. Clearly, they were trying to extort them. Blood Wolf pushed his glasses and said, now you're talking. If you want our stuff, then let's have a proper deal. How about this, if you give us 10 tons of mutant beast meat, then this place is like a supermarket, take whatever you want. Before Blood Wolf finished, Jiang Zhuiying's expression had already darkened. This wasn't a deal, not even extortion. Blood Wolf clearly knew they couldn't possibly produce 10 tons of mutant beast meat, especially in exchange for metals he didn't even need. What do you really mean? Jiang Lushi asked. Blood Wolf looked at Jiang Lushi with some surprise. He didn't understand why an ordinary person had the right to speak in Jiang Zhuiying's group. But then he noticed how the others reacted. This young man's words actually carried weight. Interesting, Blood Wolf rubbed his nose. Maybe he was talking about Jiang Lushi, and his gaze turned toward him as he replied, didn't I just say? 10 tons of mutant beast meat. We've got a lot of mouths to feed. But I also heard most of your team is made up of useless people, old, weak, women, and children, right? I really don't get it. Why keep them around? Women, sure, they can be slaves, work and be worked. But the others, why bother? At this point, one of his men said, what can you do? Their leader is a woman. Ha ha ha. The others burst into laughter, and the leather-clad woman laughed so hard she almost doubled over. Jiang Zhuiying's eyes turned cold. Sparks of electricity suddenly crackled around her. When he saw the sparks, Blood Wolf stopped laughing. He stared closely at where the sparks had just appeared, a look of desire flashing in his eyes. If you don't have 10 tons of mutant beast meat, then Jiang Zhuiying, you could just join us, Blood Wolf squinted and said. Hearing that, Jiang Zhuiying paused, then sneered, Blood Wolf, are you brain dead? Why would you say something so stupid? You should know, if a fight breaks out, it'll be mutual destruction. Your team is strong, but I'm not afraid of you. Blood Wolf chuckled. He already knew how strong Jiang Zhuing was. Though there was some risk, compared to the benefits of winning, it was worth it. Jiang Zhuing, you can think about it carefully, said Blood Wolf. What he said clearly meant he had no intention of letting Jiang Zhuing go. Joining them? Obviously ill-intentioned, anyone could see that. Blood Wolf's true target wasn't the so-called 10 tons of mutant beast meat, nor did he really want Jiang Zhuing to join him. What he actually wanted was Jiang Zhuing's superpower. Blood Wolf had already been secretly observing Jiang Zhuing since he first heard of her. Even if she hadn't barged in this time, he had already been planning to ambush her at some point. Blood Wolf's ability was to devour the cells of superpowered individuals, similar to infecting himself with a new virus. Different types of cells could coexist within his body, but only 2 at a time. If he tried to exceed that, his body would collapse. The original Blood Wolf was someone he had ambushed and devoured, and he became the new Blood Wolf. Since then, he had been searching for his next devouring target. After all his comparisons, he had set his sights on Jiang Zhuing's ability. Her whole body cells had mutated into electrically charged cells. This power was exactly what he wanted. Just now, seeing Jiang Zhuing release electricity in person, Blood Wolf became even more excited. Yes, this is it, this is the ability. If he could claim this power, combined with the one he absorbed from the first Blood Wolf, he could reach a new level. As long as he captured Jiang Zhuing alive, her power would be his. Hearing Blood Wolf's words, Jiang Zhuing's face turned cold, and Zhang Hai and Sun Quan also looked grim. At that moment, the sound of weapons being loaded echoed through Blood Wolf's group. Their eyes were filled with madness, eager to start the fight. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan tensed up instantly, sweat dripping from their foreheads. Both of them were just average fighters. If a fight broke out, they probably wouldn't make it out alive. Jiang Zhuing also gripped her long knife tightly. Fighting with Blood Wolf's gang was just as dangerous as facing a mutant beast. But no matter what, she would never go with them. That outcome would be far more miserable. Jiang Zhuing, you should reconsider. With your strength, wouldn't it be better to join our team? You're dragging along a bunch of useless people, they're all dead weight. Look, your team even has a regular human. Blood Wolf continued. While he was talking, he noticed Jiang Lushur had entered the minibus. But he didn't pay attention, just a regular guy, probably scared and hiding after hearing himself mentioned. The rest of Blood Wolf's team laughed, and the member who had mocked Jiang Zhuing earlier added, "What kind of team has a woman as the boss and even a guy who acts like a girl? Ha 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 ha." But right then, his laughter stopped. With a smile still frozen on his face, he saw Jiang Lushur suddenly driving the minibus straight at them at full speed. TSK, angry now, huh? The team member didn't even move, and neither did Blood Wolf. The woman beside him quickly loaded her weapon with a click, aiming at Jiang Lushur inside the car. Her pupils narrowed like a snake's, locking onto him. But suddenly, Blood Wolf felt a wave of dread. He scanned the front of the minibus and saw a black barrel sticking out. That chilling feeling, it came from that barrel. He didn't know what it was, but his instincts screamed danger. When a superpowered person reached a certain level, they developed a sense like wild animals, a warning before death. Blood Wolf had initially been unconcerned with the oncoming vehicle, but now he shouted, "Run!" As he yelled, he leapt backward. His muscles tightened like springs, and in an instant, he went from looking like an average young man to something more like a wolf, leaping backward fast, with his eyes glowing red. The woman didn't dare shoot now. She turned and ran too. That team member and the others saw Blood Wolf flee and immediately realized something was wrong. But they weren't as fast as Blood Wolf or the woman, both were superpowered. Vroom vroom vroom. The others scrambled to turn their motorcycles around and tried to escape. But right at that moment, boom! A loud explosion echoed, and everyone felt like they had gone deaf. A shockwave seemed to blast through the air in front of them. Thud! The team member who had been hit by the shockwave felt like he and his motorcycle had been slammed by a freight train. His body was in excruciating pain. A red mist clouded his vision. Was that his own blood? Thud! He slammed into the ground like a rag doll, rolling several times. When he stopped, he looked like a fish out of water, mouth gaping, blood pouring from inside. His eyes were wide open, pupils dilated. He saw several others lying nearby, covered in blood, bodies twitching, clearly not going to survive. Blood Wolf, the woman, and a few others had fled outside the gate. He opened his mouth to call for help, but only blood came out, with chunks of organs. Air cannon fired. Base vehicle accelerating. Inside the vehicle, Jiang Liushur's face was calm. He turned the steering wheel, stomped the gas, and charged toward the gate. Holy shit! What the hell is that? Run! Blood Wolf and the others were still reeling from the explosion and shockwave. When they saw the minibus coming again, their scalps went numb. They didn't even have time to get into their off-road vehicles or the Humvee, they just fled toward the gate in panic. Screech! A sharp braking sound, Jiang Lushur slammed on the brakes in front of the Humvee. He sat behind the wheel, coldly staring out through the windshield at the people beyond the gate. Blood Wolf and the others had already retreated far away. They were frightened by the shockwave from the air cannon, but what they didn't know was that Jiang Lushur's air cannon needed 10 seconds to charge each time and had a cooldown after firing. If they'd known, they wouldn't have fled the warehouse so fast. Unfortunately, he hadn't managed to kill Blood Wolf. It seemed like Blood Wolf had sensed danger just before the cannon fired and escaped in time. Jiang Lushur slowly reversed the car a bit. From the moment Blood Wolf appeared, he had been preparing for a fight. Once Blood Wolf revealed his true intentions, Jiang Lushur couldn't hold back any longer. They thought he was just a regular guy. They ignored his beat-up minibus and didn't realize that once he got inside, he had already activated the air cannon. When the charge was nearly complete, he slammed on the gas and charged. Blood Wolf had escaped, but the ones who didn't were completely wrecked, bones shattered, organs ruptured, they wouldn't survive. Inside the warehouse, Zhang Hai and the others were completely stunned. Their palms and backs were soaked in cold sweat. They had thought they were going to die here today, but they hadn't expected such a shocking turn of events. Jiang Lushur suddenly drove the minibus forward, then there was a loud boom. After that, the warehouse was once again left with just the four of them. The people who had posed a huge threat to them, Blood Wolf and his gang, had already fled the warehouse. The rest were corpses. Jiang Zhuiying widened her eyes as she looked at the bodies on the ground. She had been ready to fight just moments ago, her long knife almost drawn. She hadn't expected Jiang Lushur to suddenly rush out in the car. At that moment, her heart had leapt into her throat, full of worry for Jiang Lushur's safety. She had even started to chase after him desperately. But the outcome was completely beyond her imagination. It left her both shocked and pleasantly surprised, and she finally let out a breath of relief. "Brother, is that a function from modifying the car?" Jiang Zhuiying couldn't help but ask. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan also snapped out of it. While still watching the gate cautiously, they gathered around the minibus, shocked as they examined the vehicle again. They had thought the minibus was just tough, but never imagined they would one day rely on it as their last line of defense. That air pressure, that explosion, what was it really? Jiang Lushur paused and said, "It's probably an air cannon that uses compressed airflow? It was already installed when I found the vehicle." Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were speechless. Why hadn't they been the ones to find such an all-purpose car? Jiang Zhuiying smiled slightly. Whether what Jiang Lushur said was true or not, her brother was becoming more and more mysterious. Sitting inside the vehicle, Jiang Lushur saw their expressions and didn't know what to say. He wasn't even in the mood to make up an excuse, because even if he did, they probably wouldn't believe it. Now that the air cannon had been revealed, it didn't matter much anymore. With Jiang Zhuiying around, even if Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had thoughts like Yang Qingqing once did, they would think twice after seeing what happened to her. Besides, the biological lab was about to be built, and Jiang Lushur wasn't as nervous about others coveting his base vehicle. His vehicle was bound to the star seed in his brain, and his only weakness was being an ordinary person. If he could fix that, while it wouldn't make him fearless, at least he wouldn't have to walk on thin ice anymore. Blood Wolf had come with so many people, there was no way he would give up just because a few had died. The question was, when would they strike again? If they ambushed him on the road, that would be a problem. Once Blood Wolf calmed down, he would realize that the air cannon couldn't turn, and since the minibus was large and clunky, as long as they avoided the front, they could attack from other directions without worrying about the cannon. So Jiang Lushur didn't plan to flee during this window of time. He had Sun Kuan close the front gate, told Zhang Hai to continue loading the remaining metal, and Jiang Zhuiying stood guard by the vehicle. Sun Kuan carefully stepped around the bodies and climbed the wall like a gecko, reaching the gate lever and pulling it down. As he shut the gate, he cautiously glanced outside and saw that Blood Wolf and his people were not far away. They hadn't brought all their vehicles and motorcycles inside, and it seemed they had no plans to leave. All their guns were aimed at the warehouse gate. Blood Wolf's face was dark and grim, completely different from his earlier calm look. He was furious. Losing several people for no reason and fleeing in embarrassment, of course Blood Wolf was enraged. "Blood Wolf's men have surrounded us," Sun Kuan reported after closing the gate. "Let them surround us. We're not going out anyway," Jiang Zhuiying replied. Sun Kuan looked at Zhang Hai, still moving the metal blocks, then glanced at Jiang Lushur. Still focused on those metals at a time like this? He really didn't get it. Once all the metal was loaded, Jiang Lushur said, "You guys go guard the perimeter. I've got something to do. The minibus had just shown its power, so naturally Jiang Liusher's words carried weight now. Though they didn't understand what he was about to do inside the vehicle while Blood Wolf was still outside, Sun Quan and Zhang Hai didn't question it, they immediately walked away. They went to check if the warehouse had any back doors or windows, just in case someone attacked from behind. They wouldn't even know how they died. Jiang Zhuiying stayed near the minibus. Though she was curious about what Jiang Liusher was about to do, with Zhang Hai and the others around, she didn't ask. Inside the minibus, looking at the piles of metal and the iridium crucible freshly taken out of its bag, Jiang Liusher took a deep breath. He had planned to do the upgrade quietly at night in the garage. But now, to deal with Blood Wolf's threat, he decided to build the biological lab right here and now. Scanning in progress? All materials detected. Requirements met. Building the biological lab will take 1 hour. The base vehicle can function and drive normally during this period. Confirm upgrade? The Star Seed's voice rang out. Jiang Liusher couldn't help but feel excited. The biological lab allows the user to create gene evolution fluid by adding materials, enabling the host to evolve their genes and greatly enhance physical abilities. The Star Seed's introduction of the biological lab was enough to make any ordinary person go mad with desire. Jiang Liusher hadn't mutated into a superpowered person. He didn't have that physique. And in the apocalypse, ordinary people were always at a disadvantage. Even the regular people in Blood Wolf's group were just cannon fodder. If an unarmed person faced 2 or 3 zombies, they were done. Even fully armed, a lone person couldn't handle many zombies. They lacked stamina, used it up quickly, and couldn't recover like superpowered people. Confirm upgrade. Jiang Liusher said in his mind. Command received. Upgrade beginning. As the Star Seed finished speaking, the materials began to disappear one by one. The construction of the biological lab had begun. 1 hour, relatively speaking, was not long. But whether Blood Wolf and the others could sit still for that hour remained to be seen. Jiang Liusher returned to the driver's seat. Listening to the Star Seed counting down the air cannon's cooldown, all he could hope was that the fear left in Blood Wolf's mind from the last blast would last a little while longer. How about we take the minibus and break out? Sun Quan suggested. He didn't know what Jiang Liusher was waiting for. He ran up to the 2nd floor, hid next to the skylight, and looked outside, then felt his heart sink. The area was full of Blood Wolf's people, which made him anxious. In Sun Quan's eyes, the minibus was bulletproof. Although it might not completely withstand Blood Wolf's men, there was still a chance to break through. However, Sun Quan also knew that since Blood Wolf's group had followed them in, the main gate was definitely closed. Not to mention, there were probably vehicle barricades set up. The minibus could get through spikes and such, but if it rammed into reinforced concrete walls or steel plates, it wouldn't work. Sun Quan stared at the base vehicle helplessly. The doors were tightly shut, and it was completely silent inside. In fact, even though the base vehicle was currently building a biological lab, all its normal functions were still fully operational. If they weren't, Jiang Liusher would have already considered breaking out. It wouldn't have been Sun Quan's place to make suggestions. Since the bio lab could be built first, Jiang Liusher naturally wanted to strengthen himself first. That way, no matter what danger he faced, he'd be much more capable of handling it. The fact that Blood Wolf had managed to avoid the air cannon and even gave a warning meant they had an early sense of danger. That kind of awareness was very disadvantageous for the base vehicle. Time ticked by. In Jiang Liusher's mind, the starseed showed the progress of the bio lab's construction. Bio lab construction progress, 10%. Remaining time, 54 minutes. What the hell was that thing just now? Outside the warehouse, Blood Wolf's group was still in shock. If it had been some known attack, like a firearm or a supernatural power, they could have understood. But this? It left them shaken. Their survivor team was known for its reckless madness. Aside from hunting mutant beasts, ordinary survivors were extremely unlucky to run into them. Men could still be recruited as cannon fodder, but women were often tortured to death, even children weren't spared. These people used madness to numb themselves and cover up their fear. But that one blast just now truly stunned them. An invisible, incomprehensible attack like that, it scared them. How are we supposed to fight that? One team member blurted out, only to be kicked to the ground by Blood Wolf from behind. He was still wearing casual clothes, but his headphones had been blown off in the explosion. His face looked dark and sinister. That's enough to scare you? Doesn't matter what it is, it can't keep firing forever. Otherwise, why would they shut the gate? Blood Wolf cursed, seeing the blank looks on his team. Weapons with such powerful blasts, like rocket launchers, were usually one-time use. That cannon on the vehicle, even if it wasn't one time, must have all kinds of limitations. Otherwise, where would the energy come from? That small car with such a powerful cannon, how many times could it even fire? Hearing this, the others gradually came back to their senses. That's true. Whether or not it could keep firing didn't matter. They were caught off guard this time. As long as they were prepared, and with Blood Wolf's early warning, it wouldn't be scary anymore. If Jiang Lushi and the others tried to come out, with all the roadblocks and their ambush, the vehicle wouldn't pose much of a threat. But the current problem was, while Blood Wolf's group was still in shock, Jiang Lushi had already taken the chance to shut the main gate. They could blast it open with force, but what if that freakish and powerful cannon fired again once it opened? They'd all be doomed. Blood Wolf had realized this too. His face was grim. That damn car had caught them off guard and messed up his original plan. Originally, Zhang Hai, Sun Quan, and that ordinary guy were Jiang Zhuing's biggest weaknesses. In a fight, he would have killed those three first. But now, things had changed. Brother Wolf, why don't we just blow up the warehouse? If they're hiding inside, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, the woman said sweetly, but before she finished, Blood Wolf interrupted, you're the smart one, and everyone else is an idiot? If we blow it up, how am I supposed to absorb Jiang Zhuing's power? What if she dies in the explosion? And we only have a few grenades, how are we supposed to blow up a warehouse? You think it's full of gasoline? At most we can blow open the door, and even then, are you going in first? His words shut her up. She just pouted. Go in first? To die? So what do we do then? The woman asked. What do we do? We wait. They didn't bring much supplies. They'll have to come out eventually. This is our turf. You think we can't outlast them? Blood Wolf said impatiently. Seeing that he was so close to gaining a superpower only to be delayed, Blood Wolf was in a foul mood. Originally, he just wanted to extract Jiang Zhuing's power and then kill everyone she brought. But now, he decided to torture them to death. As for that young man, he hadn't even paid much attention to him. Killing him would have been like stepping on an ant. But now, Blood Wolf decided to give Jiang Lushi special treatment. He wanted to slice off Jiang Lushi's flesh bit by bit to feed the zombies, then throw him into a horde of them. Time passed, minute by minute. Jiang Lushi sat in the driver's seat of the base vehicle, eyes shut, like a meditating monk. His calm appearance left Sun Quan and the others speechless. At a time like this, he closed his eyes? Trying to act cool? In reality, while Jiang Lushi's eyes were closed, he was focused on the starseed notifications in his mind. Biolab construction progress, 70%. Remaining time, 18 minutes. Biolab construction progress, 80%. Remaining time, 12 minutes. The closer it got to completion, the calmer Jiang Lushi became. Until the progress reached 100%. Beep. A soft sound. The biolab was complete. Jiang Lushi suddenly opened his eyes and took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with excitement. It was ready. Finally ready. To Jiang Lushi, the biolab was incredibly important. In this post-apocalyptic world, external power was still just external. When he was powerless, even a small knife could kill him, let alone zombies. That's why Jiang Lushi didn't dare to leave the vehicle or go into the building. Biolab construction complete. Host may now choose to configure gene evolution fluid. Proceed now. Jiang Lushi chose yes, without hesitation. Then, various options popped up in his mind. Jiang Lushi browsed through them one by one. The first bottle of gene evolution fluid would activate one of Jiang Lushi's body abilities. Option 1, Defense Enhancement. Makes muscles, skin, and blood vessels tougher and stronger, able to resist sword and knife attacks. After secondary evolution, it can even block handgun and rifle bullets. When Jiang Lushi saw the first option, he was tempted. Defense was what he needed most. With strong defense, he wouldn't have to fear ambushes or sneak attacks, and wouldn't have to stay stuck inside the vehicle. He kept reading. Option 2, Strength Enhancement. Gain unparalleled physical strength. Option 3, Agility Enhancement. Gain both speed and dodging abilities. At high levels, combined with vision and prediction, you can dodge attacks from modern firearms. Option 4, Constitution Enhancement. Gain powerful vitality. Even with serious injuries, you can recover quickly. Gain strong resistance to viruses and immunity to infections from level 1 or lower zombies. Option 5. Jiang Lushi kept looking. Every option made him excited. If he could have all of them, wouldn't he be a superhuman? But unfortunately, he could only choose one. Whether it was strength, agility, or defense, they were all too one-dimensional. Although they would make Jiang Lushi a strong superpowered person, they still weren't enough. He needed something that could immediately boost his overall combat ability. Finally, when he reached the 10th option, Jiang Liusher's heart moved. This was it. Option 10, nervous system and brain enhancement. Strengthen neurons, enabling faster electrical signal transmission, and give the brain stronger and faster computing power. Upon seeing this option, Jiang Liusher couldn't take his eyes off it. This 10th choice wouldn't increase his defense or attack power. His body would still be an ordinary human's. One bullet would still kill him. His strength wouldn't increase either. But, faster neuron signal transmission meant so much more. An average person's neural signal speed is about 100 meters per second. A complete nerve reflex takes at least 0.1 to 0.2 seconds, and that's already considered fast. For example, when a zombie jumps at you, the visual info has to go from your eyes to your brain, then the brain processes it, decides on an evasion direction, and sends signals to the muscles. This whole back-and-forth process, including thinking and judgment, takes time. But what if neural transmission speed reached 1000 meters per second? Then your reaction time would be 10 times faster. Your brain's computing speed would also be 10 times faster. Not only that, but memory, learning ability, and judgment would all see qualitative leaps. If we exaggerate further, what if neural transmission reached the speed of light? Large electronic computers use electricity to transmit signals, but since electrons are particles, the actual transmission speed doesn't meet the highest requirements. This is where photon computers come in, computers that use light to transmit information. These are true light-speed computers, with processing speeds in the trillions of operations per second. That's the terrifying power of photon computing. But photon computers aren't even the most advanced. There are theoretical quantum computers. Researchers in quantum mechanics are trying to use quantum entanglement to develop them. That would be faster than light data transfer, which defies Einstein's theory of relativity. Once mocked by Einstein as spooky action at a distance, it turned out to be real. Quantum computers would have near-infinite speed. The amount of data they could process in half an hour might equal the sum of all human computing in history. Because he understood all this, Jiang Liusher chose the 10th option without hesitation. Brain and nervous system evolution. Once evolution was complete, his body would still be human, but his brain would be superhuman, and this kind of evolution had huge potential for future development. Neural signal speed didn't even need to reach the speed of light. If it reached 10,000 meters per second, then when he observed others' movements, whether attacking or defending, it would be like watching slow motion at 100th speed. Not only that, thanks to the power of his brain and nervous system, Jiang Liusher would have far more precise control over his muscles. A normal person trying to thread a needle might take a long time because their hands shake. When the palm faces upward, an average person can't keep the ring and index fingers extended while keeping the middle and pinky fingers bent at 90 degrees to the palm, unless they use the other hand to help. This isn't because they don't have the muscles, but because they don't have the neural control to make them move that way. But with a powerful brain, his hands would be as steady as a mountain, and all 10 fingers would move with incredible dexterity. Jiang Liusher made his decision without hesitation. Option selected, nervous system and brain evolution. Confirm. Confirm. Beep, gene evolution fluid is being prepared. Estimated time, 10 minutes. He'd already waited an hour. What's 10 more minutes? Jiang Liusher stared at the control panel without blinking. 10 minutes later, a flash of light appeared on the console, and a transparent glass tube popped into Jiang Liusher's hand. Inside the tube was a purple-red liquid. It looked crystal clear, like aged red wine. Holding the tube, Jiang Liusher looked at the starseed control panel again. All the gene evolution fluid options were now grayed out. Each gene fluid required materials, for example, large amounts of mutant beast meat and sometimes mutant beast crystal cores. Also, some gene evolution fluids required the base vehicle to undergo secondary evolution. Secondary evolution of the base vehicle? Jiang Liusher paused. The base vehicle had a second evolution? He hadn't paid attention to this before. He'd have to look into it with the starseed later. But right now, there was no time. The enemy was right outside. First, drink the gene fluid. Jiang Liusher brought the glass tube to his mouth and drank. The purple-red liquid went down in one gulp. It had no taste. But after drinking it, Jiang Liusher felt like he had swallowed fire. A burning sensation surged from his stomach straight to his head, and he felt like his skull was about to explode. Pain. It hurt so much. Jiang Liusher held his head. It felt like it was going to burst. Then, starseed prompted, neural and brain region modification causes severe headache. Host may choose to fall unconscious. The gene evolution fluid will complete the transformation automatically. Jiang Liusher felt like cursing. Choose to faint? Does anyone faint just because they want to? But after holding on for a while, Jiang Lushi began to adapt to the pain. The pain gradually faded and then disappeared. 10 minutes passed. Jiang Lushi suddenly opened his eyes, feeling like he had just come out of a long nightmare. He jumped up from his seat, his back drenched in sweat. The headache was gone. Instead, his mind felt extremely clear. When he looked around, everything seemed much clearer than before. He glanced at the base vehicle's windshield. On it were cracks from bullets. The tiny fractures were everywhere. Jiang Lushi had never really noticed them before, but now, in one glance, he felt something strange. His eyes scanned across, and he realized he could count all the cracks. One bullet had created 132 cracks, and Jiang Lushi counted them in under 10 seconds. Jiang Zhuiying. Jiang Lushi saw Jiang Zhuiying outside the base vehicle, looking at him with worry. When Jiang Lushi drank the gene fluid, he downed it all at once, so no one noticed. But later, when he suddenly grabbed his head, Jiang Zhuiying got scared. But the vehicle's door was shut, and she couldn't get in. Now that she saw Jiang Lushi recovered, she finally let out a sigh of relief. "Brother, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Jiang Lushi waved his hand. He realized he could even count Jiang Zhuiying's breaths. A person's breathing is nearly invisible from the outside. But Jiang Lushi could see the slight rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. And even without a clock, he could accurately calculate time. Jiang Zhuiying's breathing rate was 26 times per minute. It was probably faster because she was worried about him. "Brother, are you really okay? Open the door." Jiang Zhuiying was still worried. A good, healthy person wouldn't suddenly behave like that. Jiang Lushi opened the car door, and Jiang Zhuiying jumped in like an arrow. As Jiang Zhuiying got into the vehicle, Jiang Lushi instinctively focused his mind. He realized that once he focused, he could see every subtle movement of Jiang Zhuiying, including how her clothes fluttered as she moved. Her speed was very fast, but to Jiang Lushi, her movements looked like a slowed-down slideshow, about 3.5 times slower. After his brain region evolved, Jiang Lushi could accurately calculate how much slower Jiang Zhuiying appeared. If it had been an enemy jumping into the car instead of Jiang Zhuiying, Jiang Lushi would have had enough time to react, like pulling out a gun. However, when Jiang Lushi instinctively tried to do something, he realized that while Jiang Zhuiying's movements were slower, his own body was even slower. His neural response was fast, but his muscles couldn't keep up with his nerves. If Jiang Lushi were to run a 100-meter dash now, thanks to the improved coordination of his brain region, he estimated he could run 1 or 2 seconds faster than before. But to run under 10 seconds, to reach the level of a top athlete, was impossible. There are gains and losses. The first gene evolution fluid from the bio lab allowed only one type of evolution. If Jiang Lushi had chosen agility, his speed would have increased, but his reaction couldn't keep up. At most, he'd be like, "Brother, you. Now that my brain region has evolved, but my body can't keep up with my nerves, it still doesn't work in combat. I can clearly see a punch coming, but if I want to dodge it, my body is too slow and might not move in time. I just have to watch the punch land on me." Jiang Lushi's brain was running fast, analyzing his own strength. He could now react quickly. Give him a knife, and he could take down zombies one after another. Regular zombies couldn't even get close to him. But if he faced a mutant beast, or a professional boxer who could throw 4 to 5 punches per second, Jiang Lushi would still lose. He clearly realized that this was his fatal weakness in real combat. Thinking of this, Jiang Lushi stopped focusing. Then, Jiang Zhuiying's movements returned to normal speed in his eyes. Even though his brain evolved, if he didn't actively use his ability, what he saw wasn't much different from before. "Zhuiying, I'm fine. Don't worry." Jiang Lushi didn't know how to explain the bio lab to Jiang Zhuiying. He knew very well that the existence of the starseed was a big deal, especially in this post-apocalyptic world. If the military found out, it would be a huge problem. To prevent information leaks, Jiang Lushi didn't plan to tell anyone, not even Jiang Zhuiying. It was for her own good. "Okay." Jiang Zhuiying nodded but didn't get out of the car. She was still worried about Jiang Lushi. At this point, Jiang Lushi had shifted his attention to his own hands. A person's hands are the most dexterous organs. Painters use them to create photo-like artworks, sculptors to carve lifelike statues and microsculptures, pro gamers to perform 400 to 500 effective actions per minute, and pianists to play difficult musical pieces. Human hands have huge potential. Jiang Lushi knew his speed wasn't good, but after his brain evolved, his strength lay in precision and finesse. Now, give Jiang Lushi a piece of paper, and he could draw a perfect circle. Give him a video game, and he could learn it the fastest and quickly match pro gamers. Give him a minibus, and he could drift with it. His driving skills would match professional racers. These actions didn't need great speed. They needed reaction time, dexterity, and accuracy. In combat, reaction time, precision, and finesse could be very useful. For example, Zhuing, do you have a gun? An automatic rifle. Before, Jiang Lushi only had a Type 54 pistol. In a real gunfight, a pistol was no match for an automatic rifle. Jiang Zhuing was stunned for a moment. Yes, not just one automatic rifle, we also have a light machine gun. I just want the automatic rifle. Jiang Lushi insisted. Machine guns rely on rate of fire and can shoot continuously for a long time. But in terms of accuracy and single shots, machine guns are no match for automatic rifles. Brother, you know how to shoot? Jiang Zhuing looked at Jiang Lushi as if he was planning to fight Blood Wolf with a gun. I'll give it a try, shouldn't be bad. Jiang Lushi said casually. In China, guns are strictly prohibited. Not just real guns, even setting up a pellet gun booth to shoot balloons could get you jailed. On any given street, you'd be lucky to find even one person out of 100 who knows how to shoot, and if they do, it's probably because they were in the military. When the apocalypse hit and many Chinese citizens became zombies, the remaining survivors started gathering weapons. Among all weapons, the most powerful were guns. But for untrained people, using them effectively wasn't easy, especially when nervous. An entire magazine could be emptied, and the zombies would still be alive and kicking. Even superpowered people like Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were wasting bullets when they first used guns. Now they were slightly better, but their marksmanship was still terrible. They relied on full auto spraying, firing lots of bullets to hope for a hit. Jiang Zhuing looked at Jiang Lushi with surprise, not knowing where his confidence came from. But she didn't ask further. She just shouted outside the vehicle, Zhang Hai, bring that automatic rifle. Huh? Zhang Hai was stunned. Their team had only 2 high-powered firearms. Sun Quan carried the light machine gun. Zhang Hai had the automatic rifle, but he usually drove the freezer truck and rarely had to use it. Facing Blood Wolf's gang, Zhang Hai depended on that rifle to survive. Otherwise, his car-repairing superpower would be useless in battle. Though he was reluctant, he still handed the rifle to Jiang Lushi. Zhang Hai used an 81-style automatic rifle. This rifle was modified based on the Russian AK-47. It's more accurate than the AK-47, though not as durable. But Jiang Lushi didn't care about durability, he cared about accuracy. An automatic rifle and a pistol are 2 completely different things. Even the famous Desert Eagle can't match the power of the 81 style. In 1994, a soldier surnamed Tian in Yanjing used an 81 style automatic rifle and 6 magazines to fight off dozens of armed police and regular police. With his skill of changing magazines one-handed, and the 81 style's firepower suppression, he forced dozens of handgun-equipped officers to stay down. At that time, an officer surnamed Chow, wearing a steel helmet, stuck his head out to find Tian's location. In that split second, Tian fired a burst, the bullet went straight through the steel helmet, and Officer Chow was killed on the spot. 1 shot to the head, ignoring the helmet. That says enough about its power and accuracy. Once the Type 81 rifle was in his hands, the cold metal on the gun body gave off a heavy feeling. The gun was nearly a meter long, with a bayonet about 10 centimeters at the tip. The cold, glinting blade didn't look especially sharp, but it could definitely withstand impact and pierce through a zombie's bones. In the apocalypse, when a bayonet could be used, bullets were avoided as much as possible, bullets were too valuable. Good gun. Jiang Lushi couldn't help but say. For men, even if they don't particularly like guns, holding a real one brings a special kind of feeling. Especially this Type 81 automatic rifle, it was a classic among classics, practically a symbol of Chinese soldiers. The safety is here, right? Jiang Lushi pointed at a small switch above the stock. Even someone who's never fired a gun could find the safety, but telling which position is on or off was difficult without experience. That's it. Right now, it's on 0, which is safe. 1 is single shot, 2 is automatic, Zhang Hai explained. It was clear Jiang Lushi had never used a gun before, he didn't know how the safety worked. Got it. Jiang Lushi naturally flipped off the safety, then leapt off the vehicle. Brother Jiang, why are you grabbing a gun? You're not seriously going to fight Blood Wolf head-on, are you? Zhang Hai saw Jiang Lushi holding the Type 81 like he was ready to shoot, and couldn't help asking. He himself had practiced shooting since the apocalypse began. Though he wasn't great, he was at least better than average. Jiang Lushi didn't answer. Instead, he asked, how many bullets do we have? 11 magazines left, 30 rounds each. Brother, you really want to use the gun? Even Jiang Zhuing was doubtful. She was mainly worried for Jiang Liushi's safety. Bullets don't have eyes. If he planned to go head-to-head with Blood Wolf, she couldn't feel at ease. They only had 2 automatic weapons, no match for Blood Wolf's firepower. Just trying it. Jiang Lushur pulled the bolt, round-chambered. He hadn't eaten pork, but he'd seen pigs run. As Jiang Lushur focused his mind again, the world slowed down once more. Dozens of meters away, he spotted a discarded beer bottle, maybe from someone sneaking drinks before the apocalypse. When Jiang Lushur concentrated on the beer bottle, the distance of dozens of meters seemed to vanish. The bottle appeared right in front of him. He could even read the label on it. He aimed the rifle at the bottle cap, front sight, rear sight, target aligned. "Brother Jiang, you're trying out the gun?" Seeing this, Sun Quan opened his mouth, speechless. What was Jiang Lushur doing? He had just learned how to flip the safety, and now he was going to try live fire like it was a drill? Usually, it takes thousands of rounds before someone even reaches entry-level shooting skill. Jiang Lushur only had 11 mags. Even if he emptied all of them, he wouldn't gain much real combat ability. Even Blood Wolf survivors weren't expert marksmen, but they were definitely better than the average person. A newbie shooting it out with a bunch of gunmen, wasn't that suicide? "Brother Jiang, I think your driving's great, but if you're the one shooting, then who'll drive? Shouldn't you reconsider?" Zhang Hai gently tried to get the rifle back. But Jiang Lushur's attention was fully on the beer bottle. He didn't even glance at Zhang Hai. At that moment, the rifle in his hand seemed locked into a groove of solid iron, the muzzle didn't move at all. Normal shooters inevitably have slight barrel shake from muscle movement. But Jiang Lushur, who could perfectly control every muscle, had none of that. Roughly 30 meters. Rifle velocity is 700 to 800 meters per second, ignoring air resistance within 30 meters, bullet drop would be around 7 to 8 millimeters, almost negligible. Thanks to his evolved brain, Jiang Lushur quickly estimated the bullet drop using just his high school physics knowledge. At long range, gravity-induced bullet drop matters. You must adjust the rear sight to compensate. But at close range, it's almost nothing. Still, Jiang Lushur made a tiny shooting angle adjustment. Finger on the trigger, fire. Bang! With a loud bang, the beer bottle 30 meters away exploded instantly, shards flying in all directions. Zhang Hai hadn't even finished his sentence when the bottle burst. He was startled, his words stuck in his throat, jaw hanging open in shock. The bottle exploded? Is that real? Brother Jiang, were you aiming at that bottle the whole time? Or was it just luck? Sun Quan swallowed hard. He couldn't tell whether Jiang Lushur just randomly fired. It was possible to hit a bottle by chance. But believing Jiang Lushur aimed on purpose was hard, he just learned how to operate the safety. Jiang Lushur didn't answer Sun Quan. Instead, he picked another target. This one was farther, a chunk of metal. Jiang Lushur aimed at the center and again made a tiny angle adjustment. Bang! The shot landed, but the bullet hole was off by a few millimeters from his aim. A few millimeters of error might mean nothing when shooting at people, but Jiang Lushur still wanted to eliminate that margin. He fired several shots, each one aimed at the same heavy metal block. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai could only see sparks flying from the metal. They couldn't tell what Jiang Lushur was doing with the bullet holes. Earlier, shooting the beer bottle made his accuracy obvious, but they still doubted it was luck. Now he was shooting a big metal chunk, and the warehouse was full of them. Hitting one wasn't exactly hard. They were pained by the wasted bullets. They had only 330 rounds total, and Jiang Lushur had just burned through over a dozen. Come on, man, don't practice shooting now of all times. In the apocalypse, bullets are precious. Using live ammo to practice was too extravagant. Usually, they practiced with empty mags. Jiang Lushur kept firing, using different angles to determine how much bullets deviated, pursuing perfect accuracy. This was unnecessary for close-range combat. In close-range fights, it's all about rate of fire and dense bullets. Unless you're a sharpshooter, who has time to aim? You might get shot before you even finish lining up a target. Even veteran soldiers in firefights had pitiful accuracy. In World War II battles, killing a few thousand enemies was considered a major victory. But such battles consumed hundreds of thousands of rounds. Most enemies were killed by artillery. On average, it took 1,000 bullets to kill one enemy. One mag gone. Jiang Lushur smoothly reloaded the second. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai were practically crying inside. Enemies were still lurking outside, and here he was burning through ammo. Why wasn't Jiang Zhuing stopping him? After changing the mag, Jiang Lushur already had a good feel for the firing angle and rear sight adjustments. But enemies weren't stationary, they moved. Jiang Lushur suddenly turned to Zhang Hai and said, "Zhang Hai, go grab a bottle." Not far away, 2 intact beer bottles remained. Zhang Hai looked unwilling. More shooting? Seeing Jiang Zhuing stay silent, Zhang Hai had no choice but to pick one up with a bitter face. Throw it out, as hard as you can. Jiang Lushi ordered. Zhang Hai was stunned. What? Throw it. Jiang Lushi repeated. Zhang Hai's power was in his fingers. He could definitely throw far. Since Jiang Lushi had already wasted a mag, he wasn't too happy, but whatever, throw it then. He flung the bottle. It spun through the air with a whistling sound. That throw easily sent it 50 to 60 meters. The bottle flew in a beautiful arc. Without hesitation, Jiang Lushi raised the rifle. At that moment, the bottle seemed to slow down in the air. He could clearly see even its spinning motion. Jiang Lushi pulled the trigger. Bang! The bottle shattered midair. Countless shards of glass fell from the air like a shower of petals, crashing onto the concrete floor with crisp, clear sounds. Zhang Hai, who had thrown the bottle, was completely stunned, his mouth wide open. He could almost fit an egg in it. Damn! No way, that's fake. Sun Quan was completely dumbfounded. Was Jiang Lushi really a newbie at shooting? Hitting a stationary target, many people can manage once they understand the basics. Depending on the shooting distance, choosing the right rear sight setting and fixing the shooting angle, as long as your hand doesn't shake too much, the bullet usually won't miss by much. But hitting a moving target? That's a whole different level. Hitting a flying bottle thrown by hand, and that fast? That's harder than Olympic skeet shooting. In Olympic skeet, they use shotguns that shoot a spread of pellets. Even if just one pellet hits the clay disc, it's counted as a hit. And even then, they often miss. But Jiang Lushi? He used a Type 81, which fires just one bullet at a time, and hit a fast-flying beer bottle. How fast must his reflexes be? How precise must his eyes be? Predicting the bottle's flight path, aiming, firing, it all had to be completed in fractions of a second. And the farther the bottle flew, the harder it was. That shot he made, the bottle had flown at least 20 meters. Brother Jiang, are you messing with me? You said you were new to guns, and you didn't even know how to turn the safety off? Were you on the national shooting team or something? Zhang Hai couldn't figure it out. Who else could do this, except those in the national team specializing in skeet or moving targets? Even trained soldiers mostly shoot at fixed torso targets. Even military snipers, top marksmen, would probably miss a flying beer bottle. They don't train for that. Bullshit. You think I don't know what my own brother does? Jiang Zhuiying cursed at Zhang Hai. She had grown up with Jiang Lushi and knew him well. As for practicing with guns during spare time, that was basically impossible in China. Only the rich could afford that kind of hobby. All the magazines, give them to me. Jiang Lushi hefted the Type 81 and stretched out his hand. There was nothing left to say. Zhang Hai quickly handed over all the magazines he had. When we charge out, I'll go first. You two provide covering fire. Sun Quan, man the machine gun. Zhang Hai, throw grenades. Zhuiying, stay in the car, with me. Sun Quan's ability was gecko-like wall climbing, allowing him to hide in spots no one else could. Handling a machine gun well was an art. This wasn't some anti-Japanese drama where the hero grabs a machine gun and mows down a crowd. Try that in real life, and you'll get killed for sure. The first rule of a good machine gunner is concealment. Marksmanship comes second, timing is everything. Sun Quan wasn't a great gunner, but as long as he stayed hidden, he could still be effective. As for Zhang Hai, his strength far exceeded normal people. Throwing grenades across tens of meters was the best way to use his power. There were fewer than 10 grenades in Jiang Zhuiying's team, but if used right, Zhang Hai would be like a heavy artillery cannon. Jiang Lushi, holding the Type 81, jumped onto the base vehicle. Jiang Zhuiying followed close behind. Brother Jiang, you want the boss to drive? Zhang Hai glanced at Jiang Zhuiying. If Jiang Lushi was shooting with the rifle, then obviously she'd be driving. Most of Jiang Zhuiying's driving skills had been learned after the apocalypse. Before that, her family wasn't well off, and she couldn't drive. Since the world ended, she had trained hard, but her skills still weren't great. Plus, this wasn't an off-road vehicle, it was a bulky minibus. Could she really handle it? No need. I'll drive. Zhuiying, you just focus on attacking. Jiang Lushi sat in the driver's seat and pulled open the left side window. He propped the Type 81 on the window frame. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were stunned. What? Jiang Lushi was going to drive and shoot at the same time? Was this a joke? Whether you're driving or shooting, both take full focus. There were enemies outside and barricades on the road, just driving safely was hard enough. But now he wanted to aim and shoot too? The car would be moving. The enemies would be moving. He'd have to steer with one hand, shoot with the other, and still shift gears, hit the clutch, gas, and brake, all while trying to aim? Multitasking wasn't supposed to be like this. Sun Quan, go open the gate. Be careful. Jiang Lushi gave the order. Sun Kuan swallowed hard. This wasn't just playing with guns and cars, this was risking their lives. He glanced at Jiang Zhuiying. She was already in the passenger seat, pulling out her katana. She yanked on the chain, making it rattle. The metallic clinking was sharp and clear. She was clearly ready. Well, looks like these two siblings are nuts. Guess I'll risk my life with them. Sun Kuan gritted his teeth and jumped onto the metal storage pile. From there, he leaped across to the top of the warehouse gate, stood on the vertical wall, and pulled open the rolling door. With the sound of the metal shutter clattering open, Jiang Lusher shifted into gear and slammed on the gas. Hold on tight. Jiang Lusher gripped the wheel with one hand, eyes locked ahead. The base vehicle shot forward, its acceleration so powerful that Jiang Zhuiying was nearly pressed into the passenger seat. V-room. The base vehicle roared like a wild beast, charging out like a mad bull. This van. Sun Kuan's heart pounded. This wasn't a minibus, it was a damn F1 race car. Meanwhile, outside the warehouse gate, Blood Wolf's team was lying in ambush.